that's not Ethan's friend. That shit come all over yourself as much as you want. Give me a second, I got a towel. But I'm the last one left, bro.
Go.
Sonny, we gotta haul some cheese into town.
Let's go.
There's something in the wind.
Folks are seeking refuge.
Oh.
Bandits might be a few.
Oi. Run, Roach.
I'll never let your kind in, though, the grandfather.
Okay.
Duty calls.
Oh no. Oh shit, guys. You want to go on a private dating site? Hey guys, you want to go on a private sex chat site? Here are some sex spots to direct you where you need to go. Ethan would still call Papa got a hater? Honestly, I don't think he would. I truly don't think Ethan would call me a hater. I think Dan would call me a hater. My last bit of charitability left for Ethan is that he's not a fucking idiot, and I think that Ethan is going through his fucking frustration arc. I think that Ethan has hit a point, because he's such a large content creator, that he doesn't truly understand why people are turning against him. I think he's consistently having these like micro interactions with different people and not understanding how they're all building up to a greater collective of him being a fucking idiot and being like an irresponsible person. I think he truly doesn't understand that he's fucking up, but everybody around him does. His wife keeps telling him to chill the fuck out every time he does some dumbass shit, but he keeps pushing just a little bit more, you know? I'm gonna be Ethan's last friend, dude. I want you to know that. Ethan's gonna lose his. He's gonna like lose his podcast. He's gonna spiral. It's the reality. He's gonna spiral, and I'm gonna be the last one left, dude. I'm gonna say, Ethan, you know what? We were mutuals on TikTok that one time. Let's be friends. Just the reality. You could be like, Pop, you're an idiot. I'm so very right. When I tell you that, like, I'm telling you, you might think I'm being conceited, but I'm telling you, dude, this guy's slowly destroying himself. He's going to hit a point where he's not going to want to or be able to maintain the podcast anymore, whether he gets banned, it's a financial decision, or he just can't take the heat because he has plenty of money. He's going to fucking disband, and there's going to come to a point where he's going to get to a self-realization point after he stops streaming for 3 fucking months, and he goes, holy shit, I'm a moron. And that's what's going to happen, dude. It's gonna that's the good ending. That's the good ending for Ethan Klein. Okay? So I'm just letting you guys know this. Alright. Is Ethan gonna get sneak code? Yeah. The only thing that you get sneak frankly, there's arguments to say that what Ethan's doing is worse than Sneeko. I think the anti-Semitism isn't great from Sneeko, or any of that fucking dumb bullshit. But he's younger, and he has more to learn, so it's less surprising that he's engaging in it. You know what I mean? Like, you know, Sneeko, Ethan's over 30. I feel like when you hit that 30 mark, you're like, damn, I'm a fucking grown-up now. So, but Ethan's like 36, dude. How the fuck are you still doing this? You know?
Giddy up.
What's the bad ending? I don't know. Ethan fucking diarrheas. I don't know. Who cares? We don't have to compare these two. Apples and oranges. Both less than ideal. Alright, guys. So, let's get this party started. So, guys, I know you never thought that there would be a day where I was reacting to something that Destiny was doing. But, you know, because I'd never done that before. But today's the... I know I'm talking about Destiny a lot lately. It's kind of just happens. I go through phases talking about particular people a lot because they're interesting. He's having interesting conversations, and I love Lex Friedman. I don't know what to tell you. I just got turned on to this guy. I think he's awesome. I love the conversation he had with Kanye West. I think he was incredibly articulate, smooth, intelligent, and there's like a certain level of emotional intelligence that really turns me on to live streaming. I'm not trying to say that in like a coming on in like a inappropriate way. I'm just saying like there's something that's really resonates with me with this guy. I really like his content. And so when I saw that he was doing a podcast with Destiny, I was like, I have to watch this. I really want to watch this. And since I get paid to watch people react to this content, I figured let's do it on stream. And I also got a lot of people who were like, please watch this. But even if they didn't, I still would have watched it because I still would have wanted to react to it because I think that this is incredibly interesting. You know, and I also like Destiny. He's cool. So yeah, Lex is sexy, but in like a not sexual way. You know what I mean? Like he's a smooth guy. I like him. He was very appropriate. All right, you guys are thinking that way, not me. So let's get this started. It's a whole podcast on Lex Friedman's channel. So let's get it going.
If you have a democratic style of governance, you are entrusting people with one of the most awesome and radical responsibilities. And that's saying that you're going to pick the people that are going to make some of the hardest decisions in all of human history. If you're going to trust people to vote correctly, you have to be able to trust them, have open and honest dialogue with each other. Whether that's Nazis or KKK people or whoever talking, you have to believe that your people are going to be able to rise above and make the correct determinations when they hear these types of speeches. And if you're so worried that somebody's going to hear a certain political figure and they're going to be completely radicalized instantly, then what that tells me is that you don't have enough faith in humans for democracy to be a viable institution, which is fine. You can be anti-democratic. I don't think you can be pro-democracy and anti-free speech.
Oh, I guess he was talking about like talking to like the stuff. I'm sure we'll get there when we get there.
I'll need to see them.
The following
I do think there's a difference between how do I keep getting this dungeon? Whatever. I think there's a difference though between talking to somebody and becoming like talking to like a far right wing person like a Nazi and becoming like a little too friendly.
I'm on my way to meet
a fine line there. Just saying, but
we're meeting
Stephen Cannell, also known online as Destiny. He's a video game streamer and political commentator. One of the early pioneers of both live streaming in general and live stream.
No, not true. Hassan told me that he was a pioneer of the YouTube politics, Twitch politics. So please, Alex, can you do your research, dude? I watched the video that Hassan made about himself, his own documentary that he did. So I'm pretty sure Hassan would know more that he created the entire sphere and absolutely did not orbit Destiny until it became lucrative for him to betray Destiny. And then move on. Like that would be preposterous. Who would do that? You'd have to be morally bankrupt to do something insane like that.
Political debate and discourse. Politically, he is a progressive, identifying as either left or far left, depending on your perspective. There are many reasons I wanted to talk to Stephen. First, I just talked to Ben Shapiro, and many people have told me that Stephen is the Ben Shapiro of the left, in terms of political perspective and exceptional debate skills. Second reason is
Maybe. I guess Ben's he's an intelligent guy. I enjoy watching some of his debate stuff. Yeah, sure. I don't know if I would say Ben Shapiro is the Destiny of the right. I don't know who I would say. I don't know. Okay.
He skillfully defends some nuanced, non-standard views, at the same time being pro-establishment, pro-institutions, and pro-Biden, while also being pro-capitalism and pro-free speech. Third reason is he has been there at the beginning and throughout the meteoric rise of the video game live streaming community. In some mainstream circles, this community is not taken seriously, perhaps because of its demographic distribution skewing young, or
I think maybe it's because he has a girl's name.
Ready?
Did you ever hear that joke before? That Destiny's a girl's name? No, never before.
Perhaps because of the sometimes harsh style of communication. But I think this community should be taken.
Yeah, I think that chaining off the pro gamer R slur probably hurts it a little bit. It's one thing that I'm not a big fan of. And to be honest with you, I used to fucking rail off that word a lot. And then I met my wife, and you all know behavioral specialist, adults with intellectual disabilities, intellectual and developmental disabilities. I know you've heard it 100 times, so I'm saying it like that. But she, like, dude, I say this, she, you know, and this is a hard self-report. She made me realize that people with intellectual and developmental disabilities are people. And I know that sounds so terrible, because, like, how could I be a person that ever felt that way? But the reality is a lot of people just look down on people with Down syndrome or autism or this or that, and they don't even, nobody's going to say they do, but they do, and it's a really shitty part of society. And one of those ways is that we keep using the pro-gamer R slur. And, like, you know, it was shitty, and it's shitty. And I'm not proud of myself for that moment where I felt that way. And so the reason I say it so aggressively and so, like, harshly about myself is hopefully you guys will be like, you know what, maybe I do the same thing, and then you can correct that behavior, you know what I mean? Because, you know, if you talk to people, I've talked to people in group homes now, and it's so stupid and so simple, but they're people, bro. They're people with, like, aspirations and They're just vibing, trying to live, and they're horny as fuck. And I know that sounds so silly, but like they're normal people. I don't know. That have normal fucking that they just have normal fucking interactions, dude. Like they're just people. So I try not to say that word. I try to be a little better. And I'm an edgy guy. I try not to be so blunt and obnoxious sometimes. I know I can still be, but it's one of those things I try not to say. Because nobody really defends the non-usage of that word. I feel like people should stop using it.
And seriously, and show respect. Millions of young minds tune into live streams like Destiny's to question and to try to understand what is going on with the world, often exploring challenging, even controversial ideas. The language is sometimes harsher and the humor is sometimes meaner than I would prefer. But I, Grandpa Lex, put on my rain boots and went into the beautiful chaotic muck of online discourse, and have so far survived to tell the tale, with a smile and even more love in my heart than before. On top of all this, we were lucky to have Melina Goranson.
Yeah, people are saying that apparently Lex got him to stop saying the R slur, so that's cool. I think he was saying it after this. I don't know.
The streamer and world traveler.
I don't think he's a terrible person for saying it, just by the way. I just think it's like something that should be advocated against its usage,
Conversation. You can check out her channel on twitch.tv/Melina. And you can check out Steven's channel on youtube.com/Destiny.
Melina streams on Twitch? Damn, that's what she does on the Talk with Destiny.
Please check out our sponsors in the description. And now, dear friends, here's Destiny. I don't know if you watched our sponsors.com/Destiny. This is the Let's Read podcast. To support it, please check out our sponsors in the description. And now, dear friends, here's Destiny.
I think I might.
I don't know if you watched me watching your Yay interview. Yeah, thank you so much. I'm so curious, when you're navigating a conversation like that, how intentional is the thought process between like building rapport and pushing and giving a little like zero attention? I was watching and thank you so much. It was very kind of me to review that conversation. It meant a lot that you were complimentary parts on the technical aspects of the conversation, but no, zero. And I'm actually deliberately trying to avoid, I think you called it debate brain, which is just another flavor of thinking about like the meta conversation, trying to optimize how should this conversation go, because I feel like the more you do that, the better you get at that, the less human connection you have. Like the less genuine you're actually sitting there in the moment and listening to the person. You're more like calculating what's the right thing to say versus like feeling what is that person feeling right now, what are they thinking. That's what I'm trying to do, is like putting myself in their mind and thinking, what does the world look like to them, what does the world feel like to them. And so from that, I truly try to listen. Now, I
really respect that. That's what turned me on to this guy. Is that like, people know this story. I'd say I had a heated conversation with Def Noodles, and I'm not going to be explicit about the specifics because I don't like talking about the specifics. But there was a moment where I asked him if he was being really invalidating to a specific trauma that is very close to me. I'll just say that. And at one point I asked, have you ever loved somebody before? Because I couldn't possibly understand a normal person interacting the way that he was. And of course, some of the online, commentary bros didn't understand that. They thought it was cringe. But it's so real. And it's like, how are you a person? And I respect that, Lex is effectively within that camp of, it's not illogical. It's not always logical to be emotional. We're people, and it's illogical to discount these types of emotions when you're dealing with people. That's what I would say. And so, I really respect that. That really resonates with me. That type of, not leaning super hard, always emotional, always this. There's, of course, we're a mixture of logic and emotion, and you should be able to maintain that delicate balance in some capacity in a responsible way. And that's what I really like about Lex. That's something that, really, I don't remember what he had said in the conversation when he was talking to Kanye, but I was like, wow, I really respect that.
Still learning, especially because Rogan and others have been giving me shit for not pushing back. It's good sometimes to say.
There were some moments where I felt like he could have pushed back more. It felt almost enabling, when he would, especially when it came to Kanye's ex-wife. I felt like some of that stuff was a little crazy, or they separated some of it, because it felt a little enabler-ish. In the conversation, enabling him being able to talk to her about her like that, which was bizarre. He was her one true love. It was uncomfortable, but overall, it was fantastic. You don't have to agree with everything that somebody does or says.
It's care for the other human being to say, stop. What did you just say? I don't think that represents who you are and what you really mean. Or maybe, if it does at that time represent who they are, I can see a better world if they grow into a different direction, trying to point that direction out to them.
It's a really complicated dance between letting somebody share their full story
versus letting somebody like essentially proselytize your audience, and it's like, okay, well, let's take a minute here. But yeah, I used to be 4 or 5 years ago, it was attack, whatever you said. And now I'm leaning way more towards the, like, okay, well, tell me how you feel about everything, then we'll go from there. So a lot of people like me to approach. Some older fans will watch, like, why are you letting this guy just ramble on? You know he said, like, 5 or 6 wrong things, and you're only going to call out on 2 of them, and it's like, it's just different styles of conversation. But
Do you do a lot of research beforehand, too?
depending on the conversation, yeah. So if we're going to talk like vaccines and stuff, yeah, that's a ton of reading and stuff that I never thought I'd know going into it. If it's a more personal, like, political philosophy conversation, there's not as much you can prepare for. It truly depends on the conversation.
How much are you actually listening?
I'm always listening. You have to listen because as soon as you
Did Joe Rogan criticize Lex Friedman? Because I would, like, Joe Rogan, I remember that I was dying. Joe Rogan, when he was talking to, like, Matt Walsh, like, let Matt Walsh say something along the lines that, like, most trans people, or most trans women, are just fetishizing women, and they're trying to dress like women, and Joe Rogan was like, yeah, and kind of just rolled over that. So for Joe Rogan to make that criticism, I think is wholly dishonest, or just disingenuous, or just not good, because I understand questioning, like, trans women in sports and having a nuanced conversation about what it means to allow trans women into traditional women's spaces, because in some of them I can see why cis women would be a little uncomfortable, especially based on the passability of that trans person. While at the same time I understand that trans person just wants to be seen as valid, and I respect both positions. So I understand the nuance in the conversation. But, like, just trying to assert, or not giving any pushback to somebody saying, yeah, trans women are basically just men dressing like women to fetishize women, and it's just a sex thing. It's like, that's insane that you would push back against that. That's just such a wholly transphobic thing.
listening, the quality of everything falls apart. The connection to
all their friends in her life. Okay, that's awesome.
My natural inclination is to just be way more aggressive than normal, so I have to constantly remind myself. I guess you would call it a meta conversation. Okay, he's probably saying this because of that, or we'll let him go here and then we'll stop later. But yeah, because my preferred style of conversation is like, I'm going to talk, and the second I say something you disagree with, then let's iron it out, right?
Yeah,
like I feel like syllogisms, like, okay, here's premise A, here's premise B, okay. The conclusion, and then as long as we're both deductively sound, not crazy, no psychosis, then we're going to agree on everything. Whereas other people like to, most people think in stories, like narratives, like there's a whole like narrative, and the individual facts don't matter as much because they'll pick and choose what they want, and it's really hard because everybody thinks narratives have to function in that world, but it's frustrating for me sometimes.
No, I agree with that. I like that way of moving. Like, you just kind of move from point A to point B. Like, you start at the beginning, the logical beginning, and then you just kind of like move through that and like figure everything out as we go through. And then if you can go through the entire chain and you're still consistent, then your argument's solid. But a lot of times people will just kind of like, they'll have like a poor foundation, but they have like a really strong mid part. But it's like, okay, but that mid part gets broken without that strong foundation. But since they roll past the foundation, you see where I'm going with this. It gets very funny.
I've seen you've had a lot of excellent debates. One of them I just recently last night watched is on systemic racism, and it's the first time I've seen you completely lose your shit.
Oh shoot, who was that against?
I'm not sure exactly, but you were just very frustrated. Sorry, not lose your shit, but you were frustrated constantly because of the thing, let's lay out 1, 2, 3, and every time you try to lay it out, it would falter. I think it had to do with sort of, can you use data to make an argument, or do you need to use a study that does an interpretation of that data? And then there's like this tension between, I think this is a behavioral economist that you were talking to. The point is, you do this kind of nice layout that the whole point of behavioral economics is says there's more to it than just the data. You have to give it context and like do the rich, rigorous interpretation in the context of the full human story. And then there was like a dance back and forth. Sometimes you use data, sometimes not, and you were getting really frustrated and shutting down. And so that felt like a failure mode. I've seen Sam Harris have similar sticking points. Like if we can't agree on the terminology, we can't go on. To me, I feel like I'm sort of the Wittgenstein perspective is like, I think if you get stuck on any one thing, you're just not going to make progress. You have to. Part of the conversation has to be about doing a good dance together versus being dogmatically stuck on the path to truth.
I think the true challenge is identifying what of those sticking points are important versus what is not.
Conversation is like, it's less appropriate for like white people to do it. He was one of them. He was Hispanic, and there were a lot more Hispanic mechanics there. He was, he had a very influential like nepotism. You know what I mean? Yeah, I mean, it's just a human thing. I'm not particularly bothered by it.
Alright, whatever, just fucking kill me.
People,
I don't give a fuck.
We can keep moving. But if they casually drop, like, yeah, I think that's why the Holocaust numbers are blown up from like 100,000 to 6 million, and that's why it's like, okay, well, hold on, wait. If you think this, we have to stop here because this is going to be, it's not just a language game in this part. If you really believe this fact, then the whole rest of the conversation is going to be informed by that belief,
And it has to be something that doesn't bother you personally. You have to step outside your own ego. So Holocaust denial is somebody that would bother a lot of people. And there's some things, just observing you, I feel like when you get really good at conversation, you can become a stickler to, you might have your favorite terms that it really bothers you if people don't agree on those terms.
Begs the question. You mean embracing the question? Yeah, I usually respond. If people say so, I just let it slide, yeah. Because if you fight, when you're having a conversation with somebody and you're talking to their audience at the same time, because that's really what's happening, you never want to come off as over-combative or over-aggressive, because it puts people in, like, there's like a trigger in your brain, and this is true of relationships, of friendships, of persuasive rhetoric, or whatever. There's a trigger in the brain, and as soon as that defensive trigger gets, like, flipped on, everything is over. You've lost the ability to persuade, because everything becomes a fight at that point, yeah.
Well, I wanted to talk to you because I heard somewhere that you were referred to as the Ben Shapiro of the left, and since I'm talking with Ben as well, I wanted to sort of complete spiritually this Platonic political philosophy puzzle in my head. You are a...
I would like to see Ben and Destiny chat, though. That'd be interesting. I don't know if I would say that Ben's on like a similar level as Destiny. I honestly, I don't know. I guess maybe I just don't know Ben well enough. Destiny seems a little bit more down. Maybe that's just because I'm a bit more, well, much more progressive than Ben. Maybe that's just the only reason why. I don't know. Maybe I would say like Thomas Sowell. Feels a little more like that. Is that inaccurate? I like Thomas Sowell. I've looked at some of his stuff. He has very interesting points, even if I don't agree with them. They're very interesting. They're very stimulating. I guess that's what it is. Ben Shapiro's never like stimulated me intellectually before, whereas like Thomas Sowell, when I used to look into him, he said some very interesting things that kind of resonated with me, or like made some sense to me, or I could see where he's coming from, like logically and like an intelligent perspective. But I guess from a debate perspective, I don't know. I just don't know. I don't know.
A progressive, but a progressive with many non-standard progressive views. And you had a heck of a fascinating journey through all that. And like I said, I think you argue with passion, sometimes with excessive amounts of passion. And almost
Like polite way of saying that.
almost always
Fuck
with
you,
good faith and
fucking shit.
I asked on your subreddit, which is an excellent subreddit. Shout out to
How
Destiny
is this fair game?
So much, at least for that particular
Whatever,
post.
just fucking kill
What I
me
really
again.
love is when I ask them
I need to
questions,
heal up
they were
anyway.
like, holy shit, there's adults in there, let's all behave.
Yeah.
Like, nobody's saying incest. That's what's
I need to not die
what's
here
going on here. But
again.
actually, the questions that rose to the top are really good. So, somebody said that Destiny was, speaking of your journey, was a conservative in his early teens. Then he became a libertarian. Then he became a left-wing social justice warrior. Then he flirted with socialism. And now he is a social democrat, liberal. I've also heard you refer to yourself as a far-left person. So to the degree there's truth to that journey, can you take me through your evolution through the landscape of political ideologies that you went through?
So my dad comes from Kentucky, and my mom is a Cuban immigrant. Cubans are notorious for being very conservative in the United States for historical reasons and for other reasons, but my upbringing was a very Republican one. I grew up listening to Rush Limbaugh, Glenn Beck, Michael Savage, on the radio, Billy Cunningham, I think Sean Hannity a little bit later on. That was like my whole upbringing politically. I remember I'd written like articles for the school journal like in favor of defending the war in Iraq and defending Bush from all the criticism, etc. So that was my upbringing. I think once I hit high school, college, I had my edgy like libertarian-esque high school phase of like reading Ayn Rand, of figuring out that like, oh my god, nothing in life matters except for class and money. That's actually the answer to everything. And I got to college. I became a Ron Paul fan, very big Ron Paul fan. And then from there, I kind of work, do life happens. At the kind of the lowest point of my life in terms of where I'm working, financially, everything is like kind of in ruin in my life. There's a whole bunch of dumb stuff that's happened. Probably my most conservative point. I don't know what it is, but like being poor and thinking like you can work your way out of it, you can do whatever. It's just my upbringing is always just like if you're not having financial success, just work.
Well, I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. I mean, that's the conversation about, like, I guess the individual perspective versus, like, the systemic perspective. Like, for sure, when people go with, like, the fundamental, just make yourself up by your bootstraps argument, like, it's a little bit silly in the sense that not everybody can do it, simply put. There are only so many positions for so many people, and, like, when you have a profound lack of opportunity for a lot of people who have, like, a rough situation, you're not going to be successful, generally speaking. It's just almost impossible. And putting in an absolute amount of work could give you, like, almost a bare minimum increase. But at the same time, putting in that work can have a profoundly positive impact on you, and you should do it individually, because at the end of the day, the system's not going to change, you know what I mean? Like, it's the person that you really want to get voted into office isn't going to magically get voted into office and give you whatever he promised. Even if Bernie Sanders like won, he wasn't going to be able to like do even close to what he wanted to do with like to an extent like I think unionizing people, better paid or 15-hour minimum wage and all these other things because it's the gridlock. There's a conversation I have about like what the correct way to go about solving some of these problems are. So sometimes you gotta just say fuck it, and then you gotta work your ass off and do the best that you can. You gotta work those two jobs. You gotta do as much as you possibly can. Because no one else can do it for you. And so the reality is you can either do nothing and blame the system, even though the system might be actually to blame in some capacity, or you can do something about it and you can be more successful. And sometimes you just have to do that. It's just that's it. That's all you can do. I would never tell anybody like, oh, you're a fucking loser because you're poor or anything like that. But I would say like, you know, honestly, if you really try, you're gonna have a better outcome if you put in effort than if you don't. Because there's people who are just not gonna put in effort, and you can outpace those people, and you can create a better future for you, and more importantly for your children. You know, and like that's just the best thing you can really say to somebody is you just gotta work your ass off, and you gotta work your ass off until you don't. You know what I mean? Until you get lucky, or you just always work your ass off.
And then I got into streaming, very, very lucky break, everything just lined up at the right time. And then as I progressed through streaming, I would say through the years, I've gradually fallen more and more to the left, especially once my kid turned 4, 5, 6 years old, and I started to see like how much different his life was just because of the financial opportunities that I was able to provide for him through no merit of his own. And that started to radically change how I view the world in a lot of ways.
So actually, let's like linger on that.
Yeah.
Low point. You worked at McDonald's, you worked at a casino, you did carpet cleaning. What was the lowest point?
Definitely the carpet cleaning.
Really?
Absolutely.
Why was it the lowest point? That's when you were just flirting with starting streaming?
My whole life has been a series of lucky breaks, really, truly. I grew up playing a lot of video games, but back in my day, our day, you had to read. There's a lot of text on the screen.
Back in my day, we used to play...
God, I hate this part too.
Voice acting, but back then you had to read a lot.
They really make you hate the game.
Yeah, where'd you actually say that?
At some points, I will say
Interesting.
that.
I never thought of it like that. Like back in the day, you had to read a lot, so it helped people's reading vocabulary. That's interesting. Actually, that makes a lot of sense now that you think about it. I fucking hate reading. But that makes a lot of sense. You'd have to, like, actually, in order to play games, like you talk about StarCraft, I think, you had to research a lot about how to play the game correctly and read a lot and, like, understand and put different combinations of, like, different troops and, like, all these different micros. It's not even just the text. It's all, like, the brain process. I mean, you have, like, 15 different types of troops to make, and then you have, like, 3 tiers on your tower. Or on your keep, whatever, and then you have like other towers to create, and you have to like figure out a particular strategy and figure out how to counter the strategy of the enemy player, because you can go in like a rush style, or you can go into like more of a conservative hold style, and then you could like steam to the end, and then but if you hold too hard, somebody else could fucking rush you down early. There's a lot that you can potentially learn from video games. Reaction times are big. I feel like as the time goes on, though, when you look at other games that become almost like fucking movies, and I like God of War, and I love that game. It's incredible. Like, but what can you really learn from that game? You know what I mean? Like, maybe your reaction time, but it's not as much about like overly learning. There are systems to learn, but they're not like intricate in this like really delicate way that require a lot of the brain power. You know. So,
what do you mean just reading? You're talking about like RPG?
Yeah, JRPG. So like Final Fantasy games, Phantasy Stars, like all of these, like any RPG that would have been on the SNES, Sega, PlayStation. These are the things that I'm
pause on that.
Okay.
I just talked to Todd Howard, who's of the Elder Scrolls fame and the Fallout fame and beyond. What's your thoughts on Elder Scrolls? Why is Skyrim the greatest RPG of all time?
Man, I really don't like Skyrim or Fallout.
You don't love it?
No, not at all.
Why do you hate Skyrim?
Yeah, so I really like characters and like compelling...
Listen, the only thing that I like, the only RPGs I really like are MMORPGs where you can build. I don't like RPGs that much. You know, I like a more linear story when it comes to that. Than anything else, you know.
Stories and narratives around those characters, and I like to see them kind of like grow and change, kind of like a movie or a story. So in your like Final Fantasy games, you've got characters. There are a lot of like classical tropes of like a character starts off kind of like edgy, angsty all on their own. They develop relationships, friendships. They realize that the life is more about themselves, and they do that. And I like that growth. That's kind of what you see in all of those old role-playing games. I didn't like the open world ones as much because your main character is just like a blank slate, never talks. It's for you to like project onto. But there's not the same like linear narrative of like growth for the character.
There's an actual story arc to the character that's more crafted in a beautiful way by the designers of the game. Yeah,
I don't think one is better or worse. I tend towards like I want to hear a compelling story around like a set of characters that like grow and change as they go.
Oh, that's beautifully put then. Yeah, I just really loved being able to leave the town, you go outside the town, and you look outside at nature and the world of possibilities before you. You do whatever the fuck you want. I mean,
See, that's so interesting is I hate having too much choice. I wonder why. I like a little bit more of a guided linear experience. I get almost a little bit anxious when things aren't organized well. I get like anxious when things aren't organized, and so I feel the need to forcefully organize things and categorize things so that they are less, I guess, scary to me. They're less intimidating to me. Is this the same fucking dungeon I just did? Okay, that's it.
And City, just being lost in the world was really immersive for me. But yeah, you're right. Whatever attracts you by the world. So you were just starting to play video games. You go out and play video games. That's one of your lucky breaks.
There's just like a lot of random skills you pick up depending on the type of game you play. I played a lot of text-based games on the computer, so I was a very fast typer. I'm still a very fast typer. Read a lot, learned weird kind of math stuff for some of the calculations in the games. I think I'm pretty good at getting information, figuring stuff out, learning patterns, all of that. And then that plus the reading and everything in the games meant that I don't want to say I excelled in school because my grades were pretty bad, but I was in like all honors, all AP classes or whatever. A lot of dual enrollment, a lot of AP credit going to college. So
Are you going to say you didn't excel in school then? That seems a little interesting. I was too, but I dropped out. Awkward. Weird childhood.
Did pretty well in school, probably better than I should have, but it was because I had the game stuff that was like really powering a lot of my brain there while I was trying to sleep through class. And, yeah.
So you're able to soak in information, integrate it, quickly take notes.
Generally, I think I'm pretty good at that, yeah.
What you do this a lot when you stream your typing stuff. Is there a system in that note taking? And what do you use for note taking? Does it matter?
I use a Notepad.
Like Notepad, the original Notepad?
Yep, Notepad.exe, not the plus and that.
Is there genius and the madness behind that, or you just don't give a shit?
No, I mean, like, it's going to depend on the style of conversation. If I'm with somebody that is very meticulously organized their thoughts, and they're find a better word here for rambler, you can add a better word for rambler. If you have somebody that talks a lot, I'll start, like, taking notes, bullet points, like this, because there's a style of conversation where I say 7 or 8 different things, and then when you go to respond to everything I said, I cut you off immediately and we argue that point. But if somebody's going to do that, you're just like, hold on, you just said these 8 things, I'm going to respond to every single one, I've written them all down, and then you can go, if you want to go point by point, you can. But you just said all this, and I wrote it down somewhere.
So what are you actually writing down, like a couple of words per point they left?
Honestly, like, there are very few unique conversations in politics. Like, a lot of them are kind of retreading old ground. So if we're having a debate on abortion, somebody might say, like, oh, well, I believe this thing about viability, and I believe this thing about, when they're a fetus versus a human, and I'll just write down like those points, and then when I go to respond, I kind of have like note cards, like a guiding thing there to keep me centered on my response.
Political discourse is a kind of tree you're walking down, I got it, and you're like taking...
Just to keep my focus guided, so I'm not like running off on a weird tangent or responding to something I didn't say or something.
What about like doing research? Is there a system to your note-taking? Because mentally you seem to be one of the most organized people I've listened to, so is it in your mind, or is there a system that's on paper?
A little of both. I feel like the human mind is a beautiful thing if you have interest in an area. What I'll tell people is, like,
well, I didn't drop out of school. You said I dropped out for the same reason. So okay. The reason I dropped out was probably because I came off my Ritalin, and I had a burst of like weird energy, and I felt free, and I stopped caring about school, and I got super addicted to World of Warcraft, and then I just kept playing World of Warcraft for like 12 hours a day, and it was more fun to me, and it was the first time I enjoyed life in a long time. And so I stopped caring about anything else. I think that's a lot of why I dropped out. It wasn't good. If I could go back and not drop out, I fucking would. But like, yeah, I mean, I guess I wouldn't because I kind of got to this point. But I'm very lucky and very fortunate. But I didn't like meticulously drop. I dropped out because I was a fucking idiot.
Let's say there's like a totally new topic that I'm researching. I don't know anything, and I'll do a couple of these on stream. I think they're boring about it. People watch it. I might open a Wikipedia article and I'll read, and I hear something I don't know, and then I open the next Wikipedia article and I'll read it, and then I might have like 7 tabs open, and I'll read and I'll read and I'll read, and I'll read a ton of stuff, maybe for an hour, 2, 3, 4 hours and stuff, and then by the end, someone in chat will ask me, like, do you even remember like this particular thing? And I'll say, not really, no, not too much. But what happens is as long as you've seen it once, what'll happen is like the next day or the day after, we'll read something else, and we're like, oh, I remember that thing from this thing. I remember like vaguely that. And then if you see it like a third time, like, oh, this makes sense, because especially when it comes to, here's like a little trick on stuff. If you're ever reading any news and there's a place that pops up, always look at it on a map, because so much of history is like on a map. It's so important to like know the geography. It makes things make so much more sense. But yeah, once I start to see stuff over and over again, just because I've like read it a few times, stuff will start to kind of connect in my mind. And like, oh yeah, well this makes sense. Of course, these people believe this because of this, or of course like this happened here, it's because that happened there.
Well,
so, yeah,
that's not what I
There's
want
like a topic that I'm doing specific research for. So like vaccine related stuff is a big one. The Ukrainian-Russian conflict is a big one.
Well, I'm talking about how I dropped out of high school. Did he drop out of high school for work? Is that what you're talking about? That's interesting. There was a time where I had to drop out of school too. I had like a situation going on with like somebody I was with wouldn't necessarily work, and they had like an autoimmune disease, and it was a whole thing. But I dropped out of high school before that. Like, I dropped out of college because of what I just said, but I dropped out of high school before that.
I'll break out a note. I'll probably get like a Google Doc, and I'll just start like writing like an outline of kind of the rough points of everything, just to organize my thoughts around different topics.
We're just going to go on tangent upon a tangent upon a tangent. We'll return to the low point of your life at some point.
Okay, sure.
Always returning from the philosophy to the psychology. So you did the Ukraine topic. One question is, what role does U.S. play in this war?
Listen, here's what I think. I think, personally, that the United States is number one, baby. No, in all honesty, like I think that the philosophy, the fundamental philosophy of the United States, like freedom of speech and expression, is better than any other philosophy. I think that it's a good thing to try to spread that. Have your belief as long as it doesn't hurt other people, basically, or don't hurt other people that believe. And I think that Ukraine is an ally of America. They've said as much. So they can't join the whatever it's called because Russia won't let them. Sorry, the words escaped me. I'm sure people in the comments will say what I was talking about. Because they can't join the UN, right? Is it the UN? I think. NATO. God, what am I saying? There's a word I'm looking for. I sound like an absolute idiot. But either way, they've expressed that they want us to be allied with them, and that Russia, needs to not spread its control. Russia is like fucking antithetical to the United States and their interests. They are. It's just not a great country when it comes to freedom of speech or expression or anybody that's not like the status quo. They're asking for our help, and we should be strong. We should help our allies. That's how allies operate. That's how friends operate. We should be helping them. Is it NATO? Why did I think that was like the North American Trade Organization? It's not NATO. Are you trolling me? Why am I dumb? Okay, we're getting on a tangent. Anyway, we should help them. Russia has been genociding people in the Ukraine so they can implant Russians. It's not a good thing. It's not good. They're literally trying to kill people for dominance. It is NATO. Oh shit. I got that right. That's awesome. Either that or we're all done, and that's why we're all gutters. I think that we should be strong allies. We've decided to be the world police. So we have to do what's right. It would just be nice if we would also help, Southern, Central American countries as well, considering they have some rough shit going on. But we don't have as many interests there, which is unfortunate. Like, there's a lot of people getting abused over there. I think it would be a great idea to try to help them maintain and stay in their own country rather than come here. It would, two birds in one stone. Help them have build a country that is safer, while at the same time they are not importing everybody here because of lack of safety, right?
Could they have done something to
I'm thinking of NAMBLA. The North American Man-Boy Love Association. Is that what I'm thinking of? Okay, sorry. That's what I meant to say. Thank you. Yeah.
Avoid the war. Did they have a role to play in forcing Vladimir Putin's hand? Do they have a role to play in de-escalating the war towards a peace agreement? And the opposite. If it does escalate towards something like the use of a tactical nuclear weapon, are they to blame? Are we to blame?
Oh man, somebody sent me an email a while ago with great words. There's a specific way to navigate a conversation where you can kind of like contribute to a negative event, but you're not really the one responsible for it. Like the classic example is a woman goes out late at night, gets a little bit too drunk, and then something happens, and it's like, while there might have been steps she could have taken to mitigate the risk, it's not her fault of what happened, because the responsibility rests on the agent making the choice, right?
Yeah,
There's a chooser at some point that is choosing to do wrong or evil. I don't believe in any of the arguments that say the United States has contributed to Russia's position on Ukraine or the actions they've taken on Ukraine. There are several arguments that some people, some even political scholars are putting out there to say that the United States is to blame, but I find them completely unconvincing. I think that when you ask the question of like, what are the arguments that they're making? Is the United States' role, or what is our role been? I think it's really important for us. I don't think we even agree with the country on what our role should be, which I think is a hard one, because you've got there's this growing populist movement in the United States, and the far left and the far right. I think populists tend to have this kind of isolationist view of the world, where the United States should just be our own thing. We shouldn't be telling anybody what to do. We shouldn't be the world police. And then kind of more in these like center left, center right positions. And then across a lot of Europe, you've got, well, okay, the United States is kind of like the big kid on the block. Like, we're looking to them for guidance and leadership on situations like what's going on in Ukraine. So, insofar as the original question is like, what is like the United States' responsibility? I think we have a responsibility to ensure the relative like freedom, prosperity, and stability across Europe. I think that defending Ukraine's sovereignty and right to their borders is a part of that. And I don't believe that prior to the invasion in 2022, I don't think the United States was contributing to Russia invading that country. I know there are arguments given that like the expansion of NATO, has something that's been threatening to Russia, but the Baltics joined and Russia didn't do anything about it. The invasion to Crimea was very clearly a response to the revolution in 2014. The invasion on the borders is clearly a response to Ukraine winning the civil war in the southeast and the Donbass, and Russia becoming more aggressive. I don't think that you can blame any of that on NATO expansion. There's no NATO countries that are threatening Russia or invading Russia.
Do you think there is a nuclear threat? Do you think about this? Do you worry about this, that there is a threat of a tactical nuclear weapon being dropped?
I don't know. Maybe. Listen, I never thought that there was a threat to anything until I was like, none of this shit will happen. That'd be fucking preposterous until they overturned Roe v. Wade, and I was like, holy fuck, like maybe some shit actually can happen. It's possible. I mean, you know, I could see somebody's ego getting so above them that shit, brother. I could see somebody's ego getting so ahead of themselves that they will be like, yeah, let's just kill everything if I can't own it. You know what I mean? I could see that. You know, I could definitely see that. It just takes one fucking sociopath in power to really fuck up the world, you know?
I think that possibility exists either way, and I think the responsibility for that is on Russia. Because it just can't be the case that if you have nukes, you're allowed to invade countries and take their land. Because if anything, I think that down the road also increases the potential for nuclear problems in the future, right? Because at that point, either every single country has to acquire their own nuclear weapons, because if you don't, Russia's going to mess with you, or every single country has to join NATO, and now what, we're back at square zero, ground zero, square one, where people are like, oh, well, look, all these countries joining NATO is aggressive towards Russia. Like, what are you going to do?
Yeah, you've mentioned that there's a complicated calculus going on with the countries that have nuclear weapons. Mm-hmm. And with our responsibility, are you allowed to do anything you want to countries that don't have nuclear weapons? That's a really tricky discussion, for sure. Because what is the U.S. supposed to do if Russia drops a tactical nuclear weapon? There's a set.
Don't we have satellites that can, like, stop a lot of them? Maybe I'm just uneducated on that, but I think we do.
Set of options, none of which are good. Mm-hmm. And it's such a tricky moment right now because the things that Biden and other public figures say, I feel like has a significant impact on the way this game turns out. Because I think mutually assured destruction is partially a game of words.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I believe in the power of conversation, of leaders talking to each other. I feel like you have to have a balance between threat and compromise and, like, empathy for the needs, the geopolitical, the economic needs of a nation, but also sort of respect and represent your own interest. Mm-hmm. So it's a tricky one. Like, how do you play the hand?
It reminds me of for tap, where it's like you can make one mistake and then
I think there's a really good reference that I could send you guys to for this.
Legalize nuclear bombs.
Absolutely, 1,000% agree.
Legalize nuclear bombs.
You like that?
Legalize nuclear bombs.
Nice. Fucking based.
I'm gonna get you to do a second one, or it could be tit for tat, or there could be tit for tat for tit. There's like all these like back and forths where creatures kind of optimize themselves. And yeah, I think something the United States did really well in terms of that kind of conversational strategy, and I proved of this in the beginning, was Biden was very clear about setting out like the exact level of U.S. involvement for the war. We're not going to do a no-fly zone. There's not going to be U.S. troops on the ground in Ukraine, but we are going to send a whole bunch of money and a whole bunch of arms and a whole bunch of intel to them. And I thought he did a good job at laying out like the limitation of U.S. involvement while opening as much as we could in the ways we could help. But the that looming threat of some sort of tactical nuclear weapon, I think on the table right now is like it's going to be the annihilation of like Russian sea forces and everything. But you know what happens if it continues to escalate? That's like a world that nobody wants to be in.
Bro.
So we talked about difficult conversations, and again, thank you so much for reviewing the Ye conversation. Let me ask you about Putin. Mm-hmm. Speaking of difficult conversations, so if I sit down with somebody like Vladimir Putin or Vladimir Zelensky, what's the right way to have that conversation?
Oh man,
we can talk about that one, or we could talk about
very interesting question.
Somebody more well understood through history, like something like Stalin or Hitler, something like that. Maybe that's an easier example to illustrate how to handle extremely difficult conversations.
Yeah, so if I was to sit down with Hitler, the way I would do this is I would offer him a glass of water, and I would see if that pussy could actually hold it without spilling it, because he had like Parkinson's or some shit, because he's a fucking beta male loser. And then once he spilled the water like a dumb baby, I'd give him a sippy cup, and then he'd be like, damn, I am not fit to run a country. And then fucking I would have prevented the entirety of World War II. But people aren't smart like I am. So, that kind of shit doesn't happen, dude. It's a reality. Just a reality.
I mean, I can handle really difficult conversations between, like, two people. Leaders of countries, though, there's so much that you are representing in that conversation. I guess the thing that would be interesting to me would be, like, what is Vladimir Putin's interest? Like, what is the genuine interest?
I don't know if he had Parkinson's, but he had something, right? Like, he had to hold a bag so that it didn't show that he was, like, constantly shaking. Not cool there could be Parkinson's patients here. You're right, it's not cool, because those people might be here listening to the stream and they won't be able to click off the video because they keep shaking. You're right, they're gonna, I'm sorry. If you actually do have Parkinson's, I'm sorry. But, but he had something. What did he have? He had something. It might have actually been Parkinson's.
He has in the conflict. Because I think finding out, like, what is your buy-in, or what is the driving force keeping you here is probably the most important thing. I think for Zelensky, I think it's quite a bit more simpler, because he's on the defense, so he's defending his country and his people. For Putin, I've heard all sorts of things. Dugin has his writings on, like the East versus the West, the collapse of the West in the face of like all of the liberalism and the weird LGBT stuff that they criticize. You've got the desire to return to this like former Soviet Union-esque thing. You've got Putin's quotes that the collapse of the Soviet Union was the biggest geopolitical disaster, 20th century. And I guess figuring out like what's Putin after. I'm not actually sure. I don't know the answer to that question. I know a lot of people write about it, but yeah.
Well, there's a lot of answers to that question. There's a lot of answers that he can give to that question. So say I sit down with him for 3 hours and talk about it. I think this is a really interesting distinction, because
this is a fun moment, because this is a moment where Lex is like legitimately asking, like, if I ever was able to sit down with Vladimir Putin, what would I say? And I like that, especially because a lot of people are like, well, that'll never happen, because who is Lex? And he's a huge guy. I mean, he has like a lot of subscribers. But I mean, it's like interesting. Like, do you ever think that? Yeah, it's like 2.2 mil, 2.3 almost. Like, it's like, would Vladimir Putin ever give him time of day? But then, like, what if he did? I don't know. It's like, I like the confidence. You know what I mean? You gotta manifest that into the air,
because you do difficult conversations in the space of ideas, but also in your stream you have, there's a bunch of drama going on. There's the human psychology is laid out in its full richness before you. So to me, with leaders, I think a part of the conversation has to be about the human psychology.
Sure.
Not like a meta conversation, but like really understand what they feel, what they fear, who they are as a human being, like as a family man, as a person proud of their country, as a person with an ego, as a person who's been affected, if not corrupted by power, as all of us can be and likely are. So all of that gives context to then the answers about what do you want in this war. Because the answers about what you want in this war will be political answers. It's like a game that's being played, again, with words, and politicians are incredibly good at playing that game. I think the deeper truth comes from understanding the human being from which those words come. And I think that's what you do. I don't know if you do those kinds of conversations where...
I've never talked to any country leader, so...
No, not a country leader, but say a controversial figure or somebody that represents a certain idea. Don't just talk...
Well, he definitely has. Like, Nick Fuentes is probably a good example of a very controversial figure that Destiny is associated with before. This is not a good ability.
In the space of ideas, or challenge the ideas, but understand who is this person, how did you come to those ideas?
Oh, yeah, there have been a couple of very controversial right-leaning figures. So the two, obviously, the my streamers are Lauren Southern and Nick Fuentes. And those types of conversations, initially, aren't very political at all. Yeah, it's more like obviously, we believe in very, very, very different things. Like, beliefs don't happen accidentally, so how did you get to where you are? Those are way more personal conversations, that's true.
Is there things you regret about those conversations where you failed? Is there things you're proud of where you succeeded?
For things that I'm proud of, I feel like I'm really good at attempting to understand people without judgment. That I think a lot of people feel like they can have conversations with me where they can share a lot, and I'm not going to jump down their throat for them having a politically incorrect observation, or for them being judgmental of somebody else, or having like a feeling that's maybe not something they should have, something they're embarrassed about. So I think I do a really good job at that, and then by extension of that, I've gotten the ability to hear perspectives from so many different people that I think I can understand a lot of different perspectives. For failures of mine, it's always going to be on stream, it'll be like I didn't push back hard enough, or I didn't know like a certain fact for a conversation. These are usually they're going to be on these like very technical grounds generally. I'm pretty happy with like the direction my conversations have gone recently, especially over like the past 6 months.
So your goal is to de-radicalize the audience of those folks.
So that used to be my goal. My goal was de-radicalization. Now I'm kind of hoping that that's just a byproduct. So the goal, I think, is to talk to somebody and to show they believe this because of these reasons. And if you want to change people's beliefs, we have to talk about the underlying reasons for why they think the things they think.
Makes sense.
It's not enough to just say, like, that belief is bad. Because it's like, well, they believe it for a whole bunch of things that are true and real to them, at least. So you have to address all of the underlying things that they believe before you can change the overlying belief. So if I'm having a conversation with somebody, it'll be like, okay, why do you feel this about that, that, and that? Okay, I understand that. Maybe like a better way to solve that would be like this or that instead of this thing.
So to what degree do you have to empathize with the person's worldview versus pushback?
So that's always the hard one. When I'm talking to other people, it's almost always me stepping as much inside their bubble as I can. I have to like live and breathe their worldview and be able to speak their worldview in order to like navigate their thoughts. Because my worldview is I'm not even use this as an insult. I don't know if I'm a little bit autistic or something, but when I break apart things, I just want to see like study, fact. That's how my mind works for everything. That's what I like to see. Like personal stories don't do much for me, narratives don't do much for me. Just show me like the data, the studies, or whatever. But for other people, I think most brains are more human than that, and they tend to see things in more kind of like surreal pictures. They're kind of painted, and the brush strokes are way broader, and they don't care about the itty bitty tiny fact. So if I'm talking to somebody else and I'm trying to get into their head and I'm trying to change their mind on things, I'm going to be stepping into their world. And I'm going to try to be working through that framework. Really good example might be, we'll say like when it comes to trans issues for minors, okay, 16 or 17-year-old needs to get on puberty blockers. The way that I want that debate to play out is...
Genuine question, would a 16-year-old go on a puberty blocker? Aren't they like already kind of pubertizing? Aren't they in there? When do you finish puberty? I'll look that up right now.
Let's look at all the data, let's see what are the outcomes, let's see what are the processes for getting a medication, and then we'll evaluate all of that, and then we'll go in whatever like points more favorably. But that's wholly unconvincing to most people, right?
I don't know if you misspoke, or maybe they still use them on those, they still put them on those hormones, but it says that most girls finish puberty by 14, most boys finish by 15 or 16. So would you give a 16-year-old, 16-year-old puberty blockers? I don't know.
So as a parent, if I'm having that conversation with another parent, the easiest way for me to have that conversation is like, hey, we both have kids. Imagine how horrible it would be if we felt like our kids needed help and the government was trying to get between us and their doctor in that conversation. That might be how that talk plays out, which I think that's a really good argument. Because I think there probably are times when the government should get between, but I'll have that conversation because now I'm in a world where they understand what I'm saying. I'm resonating with the way that they feel about things. And I agree with
that, man. Like, listen, I kids all the time. I pray that I never have a trans kid, not because I don't like trans people, but because that's such a struggle that I would never want to. That's just such a difficult struggle, and it'd be so hard. And here's the thing: I don't think that kid should be on like hormone blockers or puberty blockers or anything. But my wife asked me one day, because I was like, "This is ridiculous. You should never put kids on there." Whatever. There's a lot of pervasive narratives, and I think that there are some kids that might be forcefully identifying as trans or non-binary as either an exploration of their gender, or maybe they're looking up some stuff online, and they're self-diagnosing and almost gaslighting themselves into thinking that they might be trans. My wife said that she said, how would you feel if our kid was so depressed that because they were actually trans, and you said that they couldn't get a transition? And I was like, fuck. And that's the first time. That's probably the moment for people who are regulars to my stream where I started really utilizing the personalize that argument for yourself argument. I've said that a lot. I was like, what if we personalize this? Let's talk about this as if it's happening to us. And that's when I started doing that, because I'm like, fuck. Like, what if I really had a kid who legitimately, was trans? Because, every trans adult, even Blair White, even the conservative ones, when I was a kid, I knew I was trans. That doesn't mean we should, have 4-year-olds transition. That's preposterous. But when you're, 14, 15, 16, what? I mean, if you have a responsible medical care professional, I mean, at what point does my resistance to, help to them transitioning hurt them? It's in a way where I might almost kill my child. And it may not necessarily happen like that, but you understand, no parent wants to hurt their child, which is where not wanting kids to transition really comes from, truly. There's obviously transphobic aspects of it, but a lot of it's just I want what's best for my child. And it's like, fuck. And that's why it's just such a hard conversation to have as to how this game's been out for 20 years and you still don't know how to not pull things that are 700 fucking feet away from where we need to be somehow. Sorry. And that's the hardest question, man. Because I think it would break me as a person if I hurt my child like that. You know what I mean? It's just such a fucking hard call, man. I just hope I never have to make it. I truly hope I never have to make that call. I really do.
Progress with the way that they're kind of viewing the world, because I'm talking in a language they understand.
Can we get to the part where you actually search the fucking
is that the reason you were banned from Twitch?
I'm not sure. I don't know. They just said hate speech, but I don't use slurs or anything, so it's hard to know exactly.
So I think you made the claim that trans women shouldn't compete with cis women in women's athletics.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Can you make this case, and can you steel man the case against it? I think in your community there's a lot of trans folks who love you, and there's a lot who hate you.
Yeah.
And so if you can walk the tightrope of this conversation to try to steel man both sides.
One of the argumentative strategies I say is that anytime you have a conversation, you should be able to argue both sides better than anybody else. So for my side, the genuine belief side, it feels like overwhelmingly all of the data is showing that mostly trans women, even after I think 3 years on some sort of HRT or estrogen stuff, they're still maintaining these advantages from their male puberty over cisgender women. And if that is the case, if we are going to draw these distinctions around our sports between women and men, it feels unfair to have a category inside the women's sports that are maintaining advantages that are coming from a male puberty, regardless of the amount of time they've spent on hormone replacement therapy. So that would be my argument on that side.
But again, for anybody who's trans, at no point is Destiny saying that they're not women. It's just a conversation about biology versus gender and the significant benefits, I guess, from a sports perspective that you get by going through male puberty. Yeah.
Unfair from a performance enhancement aspect. So the same way we ban performance enhancing drugs that involve increasing of testosterone. In that same way, it would be unfair.
Essentially, yeah.
So what's the case against?
So the case in favor of them competing together is that realistically, there's not going to be a trans sports category. Realistically, trans women aren't going to be competitive with cis men because they've gone through these huge, like hormone changes by the medication they're taking. And that when we look at how sports are kind of done anyway, there's a whole bunch of biological differences between people within sports categories that are determining their placement in the professional world. So, for instance, somebody like me is probably never going to go far in the NBA because I'm not tall enough. I think the average height in the NBA...
Don't doubt yourself.
Don't doubt myself, yeah. I want to say like 6'6" or something. They're huge people. Or, you look at like Michael Phelps is a classic example of a guy whose torso is like so long, his body is built for swimming. And I think there are some trans people that will look at that, or somebody advocating for this position, they'll look at that and go, okay, realistically, the way that Michael Phelps' body processes lactic acid, the shape physiologically of his body is going to put him in a level of competition that so many men are never going to reach just because of biology. Sure. How is it fair that you can have these biological outliers competing in these categories?
And that's the thing, is none of it's fair. Sports isn't fair. It's just about like how do we categorize sports? And it's usually by men and women. Frankly, we don't even categorize sports like that. The way we categorize sports is sports and then women. Because here's the thing. We never used to have women's sports. We had sports, and it was about the best man that could do whatever they wanted. And then women are like, hey, we would like to have a protected class where we can actually be competitive because we can never be a man. That's the reality from a physical perspective. And so they created a protected class for women. That's really what it comes down to. It's not men versus women. It's not to be rude, but if you look at it like this, it makes more sense as to why you would unfortunately have to exclude trans women from sports. Not that I don't take pride in having this position. I don't want to do anything that's invalidating to trans women, but you could seriously hurt a cisgender woman in sports if you do this. Its reality is like it's the competitive class versus like a protected class for women, so that they can actually play. And then when you look at it like that, it makes more sense. That's how we categorize it. We could categorize things by limb length and this and that. It would just be overcomplicated and nobody would care. We categorize things by who's the best at a thing. That's pretty much it.
But then when we come to like sports categories of trans and cis women, you're going to take trans women and say that they can't compete against cis women. Can't you also just say that they have some level of biological difference there? Like, is it really going to be that great of a difference than what Michael Phelps has versus the average swimmer, or an NBA player has versus like the average height male?
Yeah. Do you think we're going to get into some tricky ethical territory as we start to be able to, through biology and genetics, modify the human body?
Maybe.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I feel like those things are coming sooner than we wanted them to. Oh man, dude, the AI, have you seen the AI art?
Yes.
That's
of course. I'm an AI person.
Oh, okay, then yeah. That's a.
How the fuck did you not know that this guy was a technologist, you silly goose?
That's always been like, what's going to happen when robots can do art better than humans? LOL. Like, well, we'll see in 20 years, in 20 years, in 20 years.
That's interesting. I never thought of it like that. That's interesting. Could robots do art better than humans?
I know, but my gut can't be reasoned with. And no amount of sympathy I feel can silence it.
I'm trying to think about like this, the philosophy of art. Because they can, if you apply this to video games, there might be a point where like technology can do like 3D modeling better. Like, I can just scan a human being and boom, it's in a game, and now you're playing a literal human being. How fucking creepy would that be? We're getting so close to like actually looking like we're playing literal human beings. Looking like God of War, looking like Heavy Rain. I know the game's a little bit older, but these games are like pushing boundaries for their time. But then when it comes down to like the philosophy of art, you have people taking Pringles cans and like folding them inside out and then sticking them to glue on a wall, and that's art, that's expression. And it's like, can computers displace, or can computers replace that expression? And some fucking psychopaths. It's true, especially as you get older, you start to look at art in a way, and if you look at non-human art, I don't think you could have this manifest in you, but if you look at human art, you can feel experiences through art based on certain things. It's so hard to articulate this, but there are things that happen in your life. I compare it to, you ever have epiphany moments? You're taking a shit or you're taking a shower and you're like, wow. And something that someone said to you 3 years ago finally clicks with your exact brain process. Easier than that, it's like, do you remember when your parents used to say a thing to you? And now you get older, like, oh yeah, now I understand why they're saying that. It's like that, but a little more profound. And some people are really good at expressing that through art. Maybe not for everybody, but for some other people. I don't know if a computer could ever displace that, but I mean, maybe. But I don't think they could ever displace that type of art, like emotionally provocative art, And I also think that art can happen through words as well, if we consider like poetry and writing art. which by the way I think is an underappreciated class of art. That's the God of War story. I think it is an ironic, incredible work of art, very intricate. I know I'm gushing for that game, but like it's really resonating with me as a bearded fat fuck with anger problems. No, but it's a very good story. But yeah, I don't know.
And now you have AI art winning competitions, and it's funny because robots are essentially...
There's a robot behind you, by the way.
Robot behind you. Oh, nice. Robots are really good at what you said. Yeah. Oh, God, I'll be careful. That's not like one of the Chinese ones with a gun on it, right?
We'll see, depending on what you say.
Okay. Robots are really good at showing the limitations of the human mind in categories that we didn't believe we were limited before. I think that humans have this idea intrinsically that we have like some type of like innovative, creative drive that is just outside of the bounds of physical understanding. And with a sophisticated enough program, we see that maybe that's not actually true. And that's a really scary thing philosophically to deal with, because we feel like we're very special, right? We own the planet, we make computers, and the idea that you can start to get these robots that can do things, it's like, okay, you can do math, fine. Okay, you can do calculations, fine. But you can't do art. That's the human stuff. And then when they start to do that, it's like, oh, shoot.
And that terrifies you a little bit, like the human species losing control of our dominance on this earth.
I don't think it's necessarily losing control of our dominance. I mean, I guess like a Skynet thing could come in at some point. But I think it brings us to this really fundamental level of like, what does it mean to be human? What is it that we're good at? What should we be doing with technology? We never really asked that question in the Western world. It's always the technology is like normative, and that technology equals good, and more technology equals better. That's been like the default assumption. In fact, if you ask a lot of people, how do you know if civilization has progressed over the past 100 or 200 years? They don't say we have better relationships, we have longer marriages, we blah blah blah. They'll say technology's improved. We've got crazy phones, we've got crazy computers, and the idea that more technology might be bad has never even crossed somebody's mind, unless it's used for like a really bad thing. So,
well, it's interesting. We kind of think as more and more automation is happening, we're going to get...
That's true, because I've been thinking about this type of technology a bit. There's this technology that they're talking about. I forget what it's called, but it's basically where they're getting to a point where you can start to feel things in VR with some kind of resistance without a controller. And what if we get to the point where you can load up in that VR and you can simulate... Sorry, give me a second. I can't always keep composed on every joke that I make. You can start to simulate true intercourse on VR. I mean, are we going to see like a drastically reducing or a drastic reduction in birth rates? Are we going to see a reduction in the way that we treat women as men who are generally more sexually driven? Are we going to be like, I don't need to care about women from a sexual selection purpose because I can just have sex with Cortana or Siri? Like how far, like what point do we get to? I really wish I wasn't mind controlled for like 15 minutes, but these people are fucking morons that don't know how to like play the game correctly. And I know that like I'm half kidding, but I'm also like half serious. Like what if this actually does happen? There's some issues that we'll have to deal with in the future. Especially when the AI becomes almost human. And it's like, well, what is a human interaction,
More and more meaning from things like being artists and doing creative pursuits. And here's like, oh shit, if the creative pursuits are also being automated, then what are we going to gain meaning from? What are the activities from which we'll gain meaning? My whole life I've been working on artificial intelligence systems. There's been different revolutions. One of them is the machine learning revolution. And it's interesting to build up intuition and destroy that intuition about what is and isn't solvable by machines. I think for the longest time I grew up thinking the game of Go is not solvable. Because my understanding of AI systems is ultimately that it's fundamentally a search mechanism that is fundamentally going to be brute force. There's no shortcuts.
Sure. Like if it can't solve the traveling salesman problem, it's not even going to be able to give you an approximation.
So most interesting problems are a giant travel salesman problem, and then so of course it's not going to be able to solve that. And then the deep learning revolution made you realize, holy shit, these large neural networks with a giant number of knobs is able to actually somehow estimate functions that can do a pretty good job of understanding deep representation of a thing, whether that's a game of Go or whether it's the human natural language, or if it's images and video or audio and even actions in different video games and actions in robotics and so on. And then you realize with diffusion models and different generative models, you start to realize, holy shit, you can actually generate not just interesting representations or interesting manifestations of the representations it forms, but it's able to do something that impresses humans in its creativity. It's beautiful in the way we think of art is beautiful. Like, it surprises us and makes us chuckle and makes us sit back in awe and all those kinds of things. And yet the thing that it seems to struggle with the most is the physical world currently. So that's counterintuitive. We humans think that it's pretty trivial, the being able to pick up a cup, being able to like write with a pen, like in the physical space. We think that's trivial. We give ourselves respect for being great artists and great mathematicians and all that kind of stuff, and that seems to be much easier than the physical space.
Bodies are really cool. Yeah. There was a, I don't know, it's probably Asimov or something. There was some science fiction writer that had a short story, and it was like an alien that had landed on Earth, and it was describing our bodies from a totally alien perspective. And when you think about all the things we can do, it's pretty cool. We can, climb through a whole multitude of environments. We can exist in a multitude of temperatures. We can manipulate things just with our hands and the way that we can interact with things around us. And, yeah, we're very capable in like that physics.
It's true. Chick-fil-A, we did that as well.
No, he does not.
And I'm not a big fan. But whoever created the $1.50 Costco hot dog soda combo, if an alien landed on the Earth and started talking about that, it would be incredible. It'd be like, we are the god. I think that we underestimate the value of this. I gotta say it every fucking day. This game's been out for 20 fucking years. You don't have the know-how to look to the side and go, holy fuck, let's avoid those. Oh my god, dude. Okay, fuck that. I'm just kidding. I was thinking about everything I said about human beings. They're stupid as fuck. They're dumb, idiot, fucking pieces of shit. I hate all of them. They're just so stupid, dude. Oh my fucking lantern, dude. Sorry. Anyway.
Level, even though, like you said, we think about ourselves like, oh, well, human beings have really big brains, and we do. We're really intelligent as well, but yeah, our bodies are pretty cool too.
And it's a fascinating hierarchical biological system. Like, we're made up of a bunch of different, like, living organisms that all don't know about the big picture of our body, and it's all functioning in its own little local world and it's doing its thing. But together, it forms a super resilient system. All of that comes from a very compressed encoding of what makes a human. You start with the DNA and it builds up from a single cell to a giant organism. I mean, and because of the DNA, through the evolution process, you can constantly create new humans and new living organisms that adapt to the environment. Like, that resilience to the physical world, it seems like running the whole Earth over again, the whole evolutionary process over again, might be the only way to do it. So to create a robot that actually adapts, is as resilient to the dynamic world, might be a really difficult problem.
Possibly. Well, I was going to say, like, in a programming environment, you can do things on timescales that are impossible in the real world, right? Like, the benefit to AI and computers is computational. They can compute so much data so quickly. Whereas on human timetables, we have to wait. When you talk about evolution, it's generation after generation after generation. Maybe in a virtual environment that could be simulated, and then those changes could happen a lot quicker.
But that's not a human timescale, but you have to look at Earth. As a quantum mechanical system, the computation is happening super fast. This is a giant computer doing a giant simulation. So just because for us humans it's slow, there's like trillions of organisms involved in you, destiny being you.
Sure. But the next iteration of, like, from human to human, even if on the quantum level is stuff going on, you talk about like changes in DNA, for instance, right? Like, that's happening from a generation to generation time scale. Like, in a virtual environment, that could theoretically happen. Well, it already is. There's like protein folding, like huge cloud computing, probably ML stuff that's like working on doing all of that stuff, and it'll run like trillions and trillions of simulations, every second and stuff. Maybe not every second, but
still slower than the actual protein folding, much slower. That's for the problem of solving protein folding to estimate the 3D structure, but the actual body does the actual protein folding way faster. So like the question is, can we shortcut the simulation of human evolution, try to figure out how to build up an organism without simulating all the details? Because we have to simulate all the details of biology, we're screwed. We don't have...
Oh, true. We'd have to put something in a pond and then watch it for...
That might be
Interesting. Okay. A little beyond me with protein folding. I'm assuming that's some kind of processes in the body, and I think that they're having a conversation about how even technology today isn't fast enough to keep up with this like human process that our organic machines are able to handle without us even understanding that fucking incredibly ridiculous process. That makes sense. Interesting though.
That's the efficient way to do it. Sure. That's what the universe most likely is a kind of simulation created by a teenager in their basement to try to see what happens. It's a computer game. That might be the most efficient way to create interesting organisms. But within the system, it's perhaps possible to create other robots that will be of use and will entertain us in the way that other humans entertain us. And that's a really interesting, of course, problem. But it's surprising how difficult it has been to create systems that operate in the physical world and operate in that physical world in a way that's safe to humans and interesting to humans. Because there's also the human factor, the human-robot interaction. To me, that's like the most interesting problem, to figure out how to do that well. And so Elon Musk and others, Boston Dynamics, have worked on legged robots, so I really care about legged robots. Those are super interesting. How to make them such that they're able to operate successfully in a dynamic environment. It's super tricky. They're like the dumbest of dogs. Speaking of which, there's a dog barking outside. Yeah. It's really tricky to create those kinds of organisms that live in the human world. Then again, if more and more of us move into the digital world, so you stream a lot, like part of who you are
in the game, not
exists in the digital space. The fact that you have a physical representation also, maybe more and more will become not important.
I hope that's the case, because I bought a lot of stock in Meta, and man, it's down a lot.
Meta the company?
Yeah.
Is there some degree, like, can you look at yourself like Steven, the physical meat vehicle, and then the Destiny, this digital space, like digital avatar? Do you sense that in a certain way you're the digital avatar?
I've always tried to keep my on-stream personality as genuine as possible, so they're one and the same to me. I don't really view them as two separate entities, but I mean, I always view myself as Steven, the real-life person. My Destiny's my online name, but...
No, but because your social network is established in the digital space, like so many people know you for the digital space, can we swap out another person that looks like you in like an AI system, and then that entity known as Destiny will continue existing?
So, I mean, there must be some level of sophistication that could emulate a human brain, I would imagine, right? Probably the tech's not there yet, but...
Well, the question is, what's the level of sophistication of the audience that would recognize that something has changed? Like, it's the Turing test.
Yeah.
How hard is it?
Okay, I think I know what he's saying. He's saying, what if there was like a computer that was able to perfectly emulate you in some capacity? Would people be able to tell? Interesting. How would you compute the process that people evolve in based on a given scenario? Because you can estimate from a computer perspective how somebody interacts with a problem, right? Like you can make a program that says when some fucking idiot pulls something that was unnecessary to pull in Papa Gut's group, that Papa Gut's gonna have a fucking meltdown, disproportionate meltdown, and start, shitting and farting on stream. But would you be able to factor in potential criticisms of people saying, I don't like this behavior or that behavior? Papa, it scares me when you do this stuff. And then calculate how much that would have an impact on me actually changing that behavior. You know what I mean? Would it be able would computers be able to emulate human evolution in an accurate way? How do you capture the critical thinking process? That's a good way to put it. How do you capture that? Like, can you capture that? Is that possible? Like, how could you make that? I don't know.
To trick your audience, your large audience of fans that watch your streams, that when you swap out an AI that emulates you, that nothing has changed. And the question is, do you have to really simulate so much of the human brain for that? I don't think so.
Probably not.
So, I mean, like you said, a lot of political discourses are just walking down the tree together, so you can probably emulate a lot of that discussion.
Yeah, it would depend on if you're doing old data sets and you're training on that and I'm having conversations about abortion and Ukrainian vaccines. I imagine it could do it for quite a while. The only thing that would be weird is when novel issues pop up. Then you probably need a more sophisticated resemblance of the inner brain, right?
You have to keep training on the internet, so how the language models, and that's the most incredible breakthroughs, is the language models. You just have to keep retraining the system on Reddit, which is actually what a lot of it is trained on. It's just hilarious.
I do think it's really interesting, like funny problems like the trolley problem that we can kind of work through our normative ethical systems on are now like real questions. Or like if you're driving a Tesla and it's on autopilot and you're going to hit somebody, but it can swerve and hit somebody else, like what ought the system do? Like we went very quickly from fun kind of like project in philosophy class to we need to solve this for insurance purposes like as quickly as possible. It's kind of interesting to think about.
Well, I actually have I'll bring up the trolley problem with you later. There's a fascinating version of it that I find hilarious. Okay, let's return to your low point.
Oh yeah.
You started playing video games. That was a lucky break. You did text-based ones. That was a lucky break because you got to be pretty good at learning. And then you started thinking about going to college and so on. What happened next?
I mean, I went to like a prep school, so you kind of have to go to college after. That's like the point, right? I was also a millennial. All of us had to go to college. That's always what they told us. So my life was kind of, it's hard to describe. I didn't really think much of the future. I was just kind of enjoying the day-to-day because everything in my life was pretty weird. Both my parents had moved to Florida by the time I was 16, 17. I was living with my grandma. I was working. I had a girlfriend, moved out. We got a place, did college. By the time I got into college, I had transitioned from working at McDonald's to I was like working in a casino restaurant basically, and I was really good at that job. So high level of patience for drunk people, insane people, and I was doing music in school because I'd really grown to love music. And
I can respect that. That's how I felt at the bus company a little bit. Some of these rough bus drivers are they're pissers, bro. They're fucking pissers. You know, many of these guys would be like, I can't drive through. They'd have to come through and drive their bus through a bus wash to help clean the outside of it. It didn't do everything, but it did a good amount. And I can't do it. I don't know how to drive through. These motherfuckers are making precision turns on a daily. They don't know how to drive through a water hole, you know what I mean? Some of these guys are fucking assholes. They come back after like a bad run, they start like fucking yelling. It's crazy. But I was good at it. But I think that's one of the problems is like overqualification. And then that gets into a whole other conversation. I was very overqualified for my job. Like I am an underachiever, unfortunately. I was able to I got really lucky in this, but I was an underachiever. And I was not working to my fullest potential. And I feel like we should shame people like that, like myself in society more. Because underachievers displace people with ambition. And I want to explain to you how. Not everybody, based on, maybe part of it's your genetics, part of it's going to be like your life experiences. There's going to be so many different factors that build you to the person that you are. And for people who underachieve, what happens is like, regardless of how underachieved you are, you're always going to find enough success to live. Because if you're an intelligent underachiever is what I mean. Because I was able to settle at a fucking bus company that is a job that you don't even need to finish high school to do. And there are people who, because of the conditions in their lives, that might be like one of the best jobs they could ever get. And that's not an insult to that person. That's just like, bro, like if anybody went through an experience of like growing up in like a really poor area with like a lack of education, and maybe they had to work when they were younger, simple as that. I could have done better. I could have done a little bit better. I could have had a better job that opened up an opportunity for somebody else to have the job that I was operating in because I was a fucking underachieving piece of shit. It's just interesting that you should think of it that way for some of you other underachievers out there, that like your laziness doesn't just negatively impact you, it steals opportunities away from people who need them more than you. And I'm not saying don't do step-up jobs, I'm not saying don't do a job that you're overqualified for, but don't settle for that job if you know that you can do better, because then someone else would be able to get that job and so on. And by the time I was like 28, 29, I started going back to school for computer science. That's when I blew up. So I was kind of coming to the terms with that idea. But just think about it that way. It's interesting.
My thought process was I can do music as a hobby, I guess, unless I get really good, and maybe I can make money with that. But otherwise, I love music. I'm okay going to school for music, getting good at it, and then just doing that on the side. And then my main job would kind of be this career I was building at the casino. And basically, trying to balance personal life plus graveyard shift, 6-hour weeks at a casino, and then a full-time music degree was not possible for me. And eventually I had to drop school after, I think it was like 3 years. And after I dropped school to maintain my casino job, after a few months, I got fired from my casino job. So I'd essentially just thrown away like the past 3 or 4 years of my life.
Why'd you get fired from the casino job? I heard there's a story behind that.
Yeah, there's a story. Basically, I was just really dumb when it came to understanding corporate politics. And this is funny because the same attitude kind of followed me into the streaming world. My thought process has kind of always been that like as long as I'm really good at what I do, I should be untouchable. If I'm really good, you can't do anything to me. I don't have to play any dumb games or whatever. And at the casino, I think I was the youngest. It was originally shift lead and supervisor position at the casino. And when I started to get my own shifts, there were problems that I would run into on graveyard shift because of carryover from the swing shift. Remember, one of these problems was underneath the soda machine. They weren't cleaning it properly, and fruit flies were showing up. And the manager came in one morning, and she was like, "Hey, what's going on with the machine?" And I was like, "Listen, I can't take everything from swing shift and do everything at grave shift. I can't do this. They need to figure out their stuff better, or I need more employees. It's not possible for me." And she's like, "Well, did you tell anybody else?" Like, "Yeah, I complain to the supervisor on the swing shift all the time." And she told me, "If you're not getting the answer that you like, then it's your responsibility to email the next person up." And I was like, "Oh, okay, that's interesting." And some months went on, and I ran into more problems because on graveyard, here's how, I don't know if it's everywhere, but morning shift is the easiest, and that's when you're the most overstaffed because that's when all the VPs are in, and that's when all the managers are there, and everybody blah, blah, blah. Swing shift is the most challenging. That's where your highest flow of customers is. You're also decently staffed there. There's a lot of stuff going on. In graveyard, nobody cares at all about you. They don't give you any employees. You might get swamped, you might not. Who cares? Make sure it's clean for day shift. That's the only thing that matters.
Quick question for some clarification. So this is 24-hour
24-hour diner, yeah, inside a casino, yeah.
So it's a diner in a casino. Oh, by the way, I had an amazing moment at a diner in a casino recently. It's a special place. A diner in a casino is a place of magic.
There's a lot of, I don't know if I say magic, there's a lot of otherworldly stuff going on.
There's characters, I had an interaction with a waitress that was the sweetest waitress in the world. And it was just like, I don't know, made me feel less alone in this cruel world of ours.
Yeah.
So Graveyard begins when?
Interesting. I like that so much.
And I had an interaction with
a
casino recently.
24-hour diner, yeah, inside a casino, yeah.
So it's a diner in a casino. Oh, by the way, I had an amazing moment at a diner in a casino recently. It's a special place. A diner in a casino is a place of magic.
There's a lot of, I don't know if I say magic, there's a lot of otherworldly stuff going on.
I like this moment, man. It's a very, I don't know, it's like resonate with these human moments where he's like, yeah, I had a really interesting, almost bonding experience. Not like a super intentional, like explicit bonding experience, but where a series of shit that happened in my life led me to this moment with this other person who had a very similar experience with a series of things happening in their life. And just the way that they interacted with me made me feel unique and hopeful. Like, it's like, what an impossible, technology can't replicate that feeling. You know, it's such an interesting feeling. You know, I think we've all had those, but it's hard to articulate those exact things. Like, I can't explain to you. I'm gonna keep in mind the next time I feel like I'm having that feeling, and I'm gonna try to talk to you guys about it. I find it such an interesting thing. It's such an interesting thing to think about.
When? For me, my shift was 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. Or sometimes I got called in early, so it'd be 8 p.m. to 6 a.m.
That's no love for that shift.
No, especially not trying to do school at the same time. Absolutely not. But yeah, basically, long story short, I ran into a problem with my super where I didn't have enough employees on my shift. VPs were coming in the morning. They're like, hey, the diner's kind of dirty. And I'm like, you've cut all my employees past 4 hours. Like, on some nights, I'm literally cooking and doing front of house, like, all on my own. Like, I can't do this. And my manager, Pam, told me, well, you got to figure it out. And so I remembered her advice. So I emailed the VP of Food and Beverage, and I CC'd her. And I said, I'm not getting the help I need in my restaurant. Now, I didn't know at the time that I was basically completely throwing her under the bus because of that email. But I retroactively, when I look back on things, or retrospectively, I see that.
Wait, he really didn't know? Okay, so I understand what he's saying. Is that the fucking... I guess it might have been the same woman said that if you're not getting the answers you want from this person, you have to go one step higher. And then he did it. First of all, whoever gave you that information was... I find it hard to believe that he didn't realize he was overstepping her, but whatever. What I will say is that is never the right way to go. If you are having a situation at work and you're not getting the answers you want, you can go up a step higher, but you're going to have to understand that you are going to basically be assassinating anybody that's underneath you, or that's underneath that person. Whoever the middleman was, you're fucking them over. And there are going to be situations where things are going to get, too bad. I had a situation like that on my job. They took away like 2 weeks of my vacation. It was fucking scummy. The union didn't do a dick about it, but I had to go to the union to see if they could do something about it. Of course they couldn't, because the union was in fucking cahoots with the company. It's one of the problems I have with some unions. But you have to understand that you're assassinating your relationship, and at that point, they're just going to start targeting you for whatever. They're going to try to get rid of you. They never did that to me. After they royally fucked me at my job, they didn't actually target me. I complained. I was fucking pissed. They royally fucked me at my job, took away benefits from me, fucked me over. My direct boss even understood that I got fucked, and then nobody fucked with me until I ended up quitting. Because I was really good at my job, and because like I was pissed, and like I just wanted to be left alone. I didn't look in the direction of the individual who fucked me so hard. I didn't like associate with, and it would be difficult to as well, because this stupid motherfucker disappeared once COVID started, and this gets into a whole other conversation. And during COVID, my uncle worked there as well, and maybe that was the reason why I didn't get targeted. But my uncle worked there as well, and my uncle passed because of COVID. It was very unfortunate, and not one time did he ever say anything to me. Not one time did this guy, who was like my boss's boss, his boss, that I've had a good rapport with, ever say a word to me. He never said, I'm sorry for your loss. He never said a goddamn thing to me. Maybe people just didn't realize how close I was to my uncle, but he also didn't say anything to my bosses, who were very close to my uncle. My uncle's a very good guy. People liked him a lot. He was like very friendly with everybody. He was, he was in like the paper after he passed. It was a whole thing. A lot of very clearly a lot of resentment built up from that job there. A lot of issues of like a lack of respect there. That I'm very fortunate to be able to be in this field now, because I would be a very angry worker right now. So.
That was the moment that I got like marked for deletion, and I didn't really understand it, even though I'd heard terminology for papering somebody at the door. But after that point, I started to get written up for like a lot of little brand things. Like I missed 1 day of work in my 3 years at the casino, and I started to get written up for like showing like 1 or 2 minutes late. That's kind of weird. That's whatever. Or written up for random ways about filing paperwork. And then eventually there came a situation with another employee where they were. It's complicated. I have to like call it stuff, but basically they wanted to call out, and I told them if they called out, they were going to get fired because they were at like 10 points. They were at 9 points of 10.
The fuck? What the hell was that? How did that even happen? Sorry, I don't know how this got pulled, but I guess it all worked out in the end. So really quick, just a little bit of advice to people. This is something I learned from my mother. She's a manager. She ran like a she used to work for White Castle. She ran like half of New York, so like 24 stores or something. Never tell somebody that they're gonna get fired ever. This is just like a little bit outside of what Destiny's saying. Never tell somebody from a managerial perspective. From a managerial perspective, never tell anybody that you're going to fire them. You always want to be positive. You always want to say, and in this case it might have been warranted, but you always want to say, I really like that even if you hate the person, I really like having you on the team, and I really want you to like work out here, kind of a thing. Always be positively affirming, because at that point it almost becomes a threat. It can be perceived as a threat if you go to like some kind of labor board or whatever. You know, you could be seen as a liability for threatening firing if they decide to complain about it. And now it's because they can run the angle of, they're trying to get rid of me by saying we can fire you for this. There's a lot, and you know, there's a lot of different aspects that can kind of fuck you in the long run when it comes to talking about it from that perspective. So if you're like in a managerial position, try not to use that kind of like language to protect yourself more than anything else, so that you don't get part of like a lawsuit almost that you wouldn't like have to pay or anything, but that can make the company look at you as a liability at a certain point, because you can be the best worker in the entire world, but if you start to become a liability, if you start to become like a threat in some capacity where you make noise, they're going to dislike you. The companies prefer bad workers that will do whatever they want than good workers who will advocate for themselves. So it's a lot of just some advice there. Just for advice there. 10 points is firing, blah, blah, blah. Pam told me, you can tell her that she's going to get a point, but you can't tell her she's going to get fired. I don't know what that meant. And then I told her that if you call out, you're going to get, you're fucked, you're going to get fired, or you're going to be at 10 points. And then I got called in early, like 3 days later, and Pam was like, you inappropriately communicated with an employee because you said the F word in a text message. And I'm like, really? There's no shot. And she's like, well, you also tried to fire the employee. And I was like, no, I told her she was going to get 10 points. She's like, well, you used the F word. I'm like, this is insane. And the F word is saying fuck, or is the F word supposed to be fired? I'm presuming it's fuck. But no, that's funny too, because I had a similar interaction. Where like they got me on inappropriate messages with somebody because we were friends, and then the guy like kept fucking with me. So I eventually had to report him. I was like, bro, if you don't stop fucking with me, I'm gonna have to report you. And then he went and showed them that I sent him a picture of a girl and said, do you think she's hot? And he's like, yeah. And I sent him another picture, and the girl had a penis, and I was like, do you still think she's hot? He's like, ew, gross. That was when I was a lot younger, so obviously, I thought she was hot, but and then he like. A year later or something, he used it against me. You gotta be careful. You gotta be careful about who you trust at work and what you send people. Never my brothers in Christ, my brothers and sisters in Christ. I didn't, just because I was such a high performing employee, like, there's no way I'm getting fired, and then I did, and I was like, yeah, cash out my 401k and milk for like 3 months.
Look back to you.
Interesting, but I have to piss. Okay, so I'm gonna go. I'll be right back in like 2 seconds. Did you guys time me? Did you guys time me? Huh? Did you guys time me? Attorney Tom dropped a new video. I haven't talked to Attorney Tom in a while. He's a cool guy. We chatted a little bit back in the day when I was bigger on TikTok. He gave me a little legal advice about somebody who released.
Oh my fucking god.
Hey, yo! That was interesting. He's got some banger videos. Wait, what? Alright, let's get back to the video.
Your own memory, that you watch yourself, like somebody recorded a video that whole time. Mm-hmm. Do you think you would be surprised, you would notice some things, like potentially, of not having a self-awareness, not having like social, like a civility and social etiquette that's played in the human relations?
Yeah, absolutely.
So is that at the core of it, essentially?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it follows me even to this day. There's a lot of I don't know if you're recording or not, but when we spoke earlier about like meta conversations, I have to think a lot sometimes about meta conversations because the way that I want to drive a conversation will sometimes be way different than what is like the best way to have a conversation. Whereas I just want to like go really hard on like some itty bitty, like some idiosyncrasy, some factor, figure, whatever. But that's not like the human conversation I need to have, you know? Yeah.
So you got fired / left that job, and that took you to the job that would be the lowest point.
Yeah. There was a huge downgrade in pay. I went from getting like, I think at the casino, because I worked so much overtime, I was getting like $22.50 an hour on my overtime. And this was back in 2008, 2009, as like a college student. Like, it was amazing pay. I had benefits, like everything was good. And then the carpet cleaning was like, I was probably getting my paycheck like every other week. It was maybe $1,500 or $1,000. And I'm working like 13-day stretches. Like I have every other Sunday off. And there's so many hours. I got to show up to shop at like 7 or 6, and then I go home at like 8 or 9, depending on when my jobs are throughout the day.
Are you doing businesses or residential, or what are you doing?
Everything.
Everything. Are you working for a company that's carpet cleaning, or you do? Okay, so like there's a scheduled thing, you have to go to it and so on.
Yeah, but still, like this is why the schedule would suck, because sometimes I'd show up at, I think we'd be in the shop at, I think it was 7 a.m. We show up at the shop at 7 a.m. First job might be at 8 or 9, but that job might be like a 1-hour job. So I might show up at 7 a.m. and have a job from 8:30 to 9:30. Then my next job might not be until like say 11. So from 8:30 to 9:30 I'll do one job, and then I've got a job from like 11 to 12 or something. Then I might have like a decent job from like 5 to 8. But like my whole day is destroyed. And I'm doing like 3 smallish jobs, so I'm getting like $30 maybe for being in the shop, or you know, my job like 10 or 11 hours, and it's just like horrible.
So you're somebody that seems to be extremely good at thinking and conversation, and so have a bit of an ego, perhaps, in both the negative and the positive sense of that word.
Maybe. Yeah.
Was there some
True. I mean, it's good to have a little bit of an ego. You just have to keep it a little checked. I mean, like, not for nothing, but an ego will help you be confident. It's just at the point where you go a little bit beyond confidence, and you like a sneaky little dick, and it's obviously a big problem. But you need to be confident. Sometimes people are going to see you as like an asshole, and sometimes you're going to be an asshole, and that's okay. But you're better off being a bit too confident than not confident enough when it comes to the outcomes in your life, you know? You always got to advocate for yourself, you know what I'm saying, guys?
aspect of working at McDonald's and then working at the casino and working for the as a carpet cleaner that was humbling?
No, never. I had a...
The ego burned bright through it all. Or no, yeah, you can push back on the ego.
Yeah, no, I understand. I totally get what you mean. I had a really close friend growing up whose name was Chris, and I think we probably met when we were like 4 or 5, I think. He lived behind me. And I grew up with him, and I'd always been kind of an outsider to the world that I was in once I got to high school, for sure. Because all of those kids were incredibly wealthy. You know, Corvettes and Mustangs when they turned 16. It was a prep school. And I was doing they had like a work-study program there where you could stay after school from 2:30 to 5 every day to kind of like work to pay for your tuition. So I've been working like throughout all of high school. I got another job at McDonald's when I was 18. Worked at the casino. Like, I'd always been doing that kind of work. I never really viewed it as like beneath me or anything. It's not like I don't have like a family of doctors or lawyers or anything. And then me and my other friend, Chris guy, we'd always make fun of everybody else for being kind of like like preppy kids and everything.
So there's some pride to that sort of hard work.
Yeah, I guess a little bit, yeah. Because looking especially at my dad, like the solution to every problem was just throw more hours of work at it, basically. So.
You remember when Ethan was getting hit with lawsuits as from defending like free speech? And like there was a reason for what he used to do, you know what I mean? He was like, I'm going to do commentary and I'm going to defend myself when I'm doing something that is justifiable, and we can even go far as to possibly say righteous. Now he's just being provocative for the sake of being provocative. That's why,
Any Twitter handles engaging in impersonation without clearly specifying parody will be permanently suspended.
Good.
Come on.
I got zero problem with that. There's enough bots in our comment section replying to everybody impersonating us for these contests and scams.
This is kind of true, dude. People are crazy.
I have zero sympathy for anyone who wants to be some fucking edgy lame comedian using the exact same name as somebody else, which is easily going to be confusing to everyone who watches and reads. And especially when you're making crazy, retarded statements like L3 does on a day-to-day basis. I probably wouldn't want you impersonating me either.
Previously, we issued a warning before suspension, but now that we are rolling out widespread verification, there will be no warning. This will be clearly identified as a condition for signing up to Twitter Blue, and adding any name change at all will cause temporary loss of verified checkmark. So Ethan changed his name to Elon Musk and joked about,
I wonder what the Pharma Man part's about. It's got, I know, yep, it's exactly what I thought it was. It was about how Ethan, pretty sure, it was about how Ethan,
it's the spirit of
tried to dox Amaranth's husband because of what happened, and he got the wrong person, basically. They got the wrong person. They ended up signal boosting the wrong person. I'll get to the specifics when we get there, but what he did was so wrong and very scummy.
About the increased use of the N-word on the platform, as well as a tweet about Musk visiting Jeffrey Epstein. He got permanently suspended, as well as kept. By the way, Lee Griffin and increased use of the...
I accidentally said that. Jeffrey Epstein's wife or girlfriend or whatever, was Elon Musk's girlfriend. It was a misspeak. People were shitting their pants over that when I'm in that video. It literally just like said the wrong name, so sorry.
The N-word on the platform, as well as a tweet about Musk visiting Jeffrey Epstein. He got permanently suspended, as well as Kathy Griffin, and now a growing number of people.
Goddamn. Kathy Griffin's face is a parody of itself. I don't know what happened to this, but the girl I grew up with is no more. That's like coming home and finding out your wife been replaced by an alien. That's what she's just older. Come on. He looks Jesus Christ. Listen. I'll say the same thing for Kim Kardashian.
Yeah, this is the video here. I have like I go into detail on this. It's HHG attempts to dox him or his husband doxes the wrong person. This shit was horrible.
Kardashian too. She looked like a parody of herself. Some of them dimensions, some of those extensions, some of that plastic. It's not recyclable. No. And Kathy Griffin's face. I hadn't seen her face in a long time.
You going in on Kathy Griffin so much? Jesus Christ. Oh my God. Holy good Lord. Good Lord. How old is Kathy Griffin? She's 62. Listen, I'm just going to say, I think that she looks alright for 62. This is called black privilege, bro. Black people are always like, oh, you look so bad at 60. I'm fucking white, bro. Oh, top of that, you're 32, you look like you're fucking 40. I'm white. Okay? I understand that black don't crack. I'm not black, bro. You gotta stop with the body shaming, alright? Black people have to stop body shaming white people because they don't age very well. Alright? Enough is enough. We have to call out this fucking black privilege when we see it. We have to be very aggressive against this black privilege. I'm tired of it. Alright? See, that's why the KKK wore hoods, because they looked like shit, and they didn't want people to be like, fuck, we're getting old. Nothing to do with being racist and trying to hide it, that part. They don't tell you this part of the history. I'm sorry. Every time you think, yeah, man, well, white people age like milk. Milk. White people age like milk. Age like milk. Okay? Milk. One time I left my milk an iron on a heater. I still drank it.
Lord, you chuckle. You sound like an old lady. Good Lord. You sound like, I don't care. You sound like this. Good Lord.
It wasn't just one or two people that were doing it. So you did have Ethan Klein defending his tweets on TikTok, or saying it was a clear parody, something Elon said would be an exception. Also around this time, you had Elon making jokes about the suspension, saying of Kathy Griffin she was actually suspended for impersonating a comedian, but if she really wants her account back, she can have it for $8.
Business. Hey, shout out to Elon. That's petty.
Business.
That's petty.
That's funny.
I don't understand business, but I do understand petty. You're doing good, brother.
Well, yes, you had people understanding or even defending the ban. You had a lot of people using this as a way to attack you, tweeting things I didn't like. Free speech includes racism, but not making fun of you. But here's the thing. Like I said, I am not a Musk fan, but I understand these suspensions.
So I'm a Musk fan. I tell you guys all the time. Don't wear deodorant. Okay? Let your natural man Musk overwhelm your partner. My wife loves my pheromone smell. Why we're so intertwined like a fucking tree. That's how trees sound when they grow. You just don't know it because they grow in slow motion. It's true. Shower though. You don't need to wear deodorant. Unless, you have a real job, then you should probably wear deodorant. But if you do it for all you do, if you're like most of us, and you're just an online content creator who sits in a chair all day, you don't need deodorant.
Came on, everyone's out like, yo, what do you think? Are you happy? I don't like L3L3. Do I care? Not really. I'm never on Twitter. Did he deserve it? Absolutely. So you get no sympathy from me? I don't think people deserve bans for that much. But impersonating other people, yeah. Because imagine what he's saying. He's talking about, like, I was on Jeff Street, Epstein Island, all this stuff. And if it's not abundantly clear...
Well, I think that's pretty clear that wasn't actually Elon Musk. But I can see why they want to crack down on it fundamentally. And it makes sense for the website to crack down on the bigger players, because it'll trickle down to say, like, you need to not be doing this impersonation unless it's very explicit. So I understand why they did it. I don't think anybody actually thought it was Elon Musk, but I get, like, the top-down, the trickle-down economics of, trying to get, the bigger content creators will be leading by example to some extent.
What this person's on about, that's an issue. Because sometimes you open a tweet, you don't even see the banner. You don't even see the bio. You just see the tweet. You see Elon Musk, you see the blue check mark, and you see the profile picture. Yep.
Well, I think when you're on Twitter, just being explicitly clear, when you see something, it'll show the name, and then it'll show the handle, right? When you see something, you'll see somebody's name and then the handle, so they should be able to identify it. But again, I understand why they would still ban it.
You don't see the banner photo, and you don't see the bio. And so someone might see it, I'm like, whoa!
Yeah, you never see the bio.
Yeah, so, like, right here, You know, you got it right here. So it said Elon Musk here, and then here it said at H3H3 Productions or something like that. So you would be able to see it, just to be explicitly clear. That's so you guys know. He said they're not on Twitter much, but I don't know that exactly. But
unless you click on the profile,
but
so expecting people
with the verification there, you know, I can get a little reasonable.
to do that is like, no, it's not reasonable. So yeah, get permabanned, get fucked. I don't care. You stupid. You're gonna want that about you being done, and then everybody's coming at you. What did you just say? You said you beat women for. I didn't say that. You see the parody account. Y'all deserve it. Y'all deserve it. Bro, get
fucking energy against Ethan is insane. I get it though. I just personally don't have this type of energy against Ethan. But with some of this stuff going on with the whole, you know, progressive racism shit and Ethan and Hassan and everything, some people are a little more frustrated with Ethan than I ever would be. You know what I mean? I'm just disappointed, bro. I'm just so disappointed. It's like, damn, you're really just consuming stuff. I think that Ethan destroying his own platform is a really good thing because it shows us what we should do as we get larger content creators. You know what I mean?
Get him out of here.
But I'm just waiting for Ethan to come here and me to come up to here so that we can talk, and then I can just overpass him. And then I will be the next Ethan Klein, and then I will have my, like, you know, boomer years, and I'll go off the fucking rails and everything, so.
But you know what's crazy?
It's not what Ethan did to Avon Preach, it's more like what that happened with the Gideon situation a while ago. You know, that whole thing.
Here's what's crazy.
And I simply just don't feel like qualifying it. I've talked about it so many times. You can go and look at my coverage of the actual core video and stuff. I'm just tired of going through like a fucking 15-minute thing. If you're really like, you don't understand, I don't understand. I just want you to be realistic if you disagree with me. I'm not trying to be rude. This is my life now. It's just literally consuming nonsensical, irrelevant drama, so I'm much more in tune on it than you guys are. I'm not trying to be rude. I just don't feel like qualifying the specifics. I think that the way that they interacted with the whole Gideon was very shitty. Like Ethan and Hassan, they kind of just like dog shit on him. They went with this whole argument that he doesn't care about social issues because he made a fucking video. And he, you know, so.
You remember when he had his 1 week ban?
Ethan talked about having you on before, then Dan said no because they thought you were more right wing. Do you have a clip of that? That's me fucking crazy. They already banned me from Ethan. They already banned me from Ethan's chat. I got the membership and everything, and I can't type in there. I know I'm banned because I actually got on my secondary channel first, and then I typed in there, and I was able to. Then I went and got a membership on the main channel, and I couldn't type in there. So it was like they banned me already. And like, yeah, I know, like, even Abba said that, like, made a joke when I talked to him. He's like, oh, Papa, you look like you're like a Nick Fuentes guy. Because look at me, I look like a conservative. Like, I look like an unironic, like, very conservative, like, racist. And I know that, and I think it's funny. I'm fine with that. And it's one of the, like, the minor struggles that I have sometimes when I'm interacting with people. But I'm very clearly, like, not a fucking, like, progressive. And, like, even Abba making the joke, he didn't say I wouldn't talk to you because I thought of this, you know? He was just making a joke about that's what I look like, and then we talked, and then it's very clear that that's not who I. You know what I mean? If you guys remember them calling me right wing, why didn't you tell me what that was? Anyway, I saw the guy. I'd like to know who this guy is, man. Got me that clip, guys. Sounds good.
Does he have a online persona?
No.
He's a producer.
Okay. If you don't know who Olivia is, she's the loser feminist researcher who spends all her
Jesus Christ. I think they're going so hard.
They're on Reddit boards and thinks that's research, okay?
Oh,
so the way she found
it's research for this field.
This dude's name was directly doxed. And she went on a Reddit post and looked at the
here's the thing. They're talking about, this is what happened, because I covered this. And I showed you, you can go look at my video for better coverage than these goobers could ever give you if I could open it to the right page. Okay, I'm just kidding. I'll bust my hops on that one. This is the thing. I covered this like very. You can look into my full thing. But here's the thing. This was when the whole Amaranth thing was going on. Amaranth's husband was. It seems like he's very abusive verbally to her, and that's shitty. But it's none of our responsibilities to try to dox. Even if they got the right person. What happened is they got the wrong person. They accidentally leaked information about the wrong person that wasn't actually her husband. And he was like, Ethan was joking about some dog poop there. But like, you know, you have to be very careful when you're a larger content creator. Even if it was actually her husband, you have no right to dox him. And it's nothing to do with him. You're not fucking vigilante justice. Amaranth is having a problem. It does not help her to exacerbate that problem by trying to dox her husband and send hate to him. She has every right to handle it how she wants. If she said everybody dox him, then be my guest. I wouldn't care. Right? But realistically speaking, even if they got it right, there's no right to try to dox this guy. It's Amaranth's decision on how she wants to operate her relationship. I think this is one of the problems with like talking about it online. I understand why Amaranth did it. I'm not criticizing her for doing it. But like, it's her struggle. She deals with it how she wants. And you want to know what? The biggest hot take here is if she decided she wanted to go through counseling and fix her marriage, she has every right to do that, and there's no criticism on her. We don't know the extent of her marriage. I think they're getting divorced. It doesn't matter. You know, he's a piece of shit, but if they decided and she said, I will stay with you if you go to therapy and you no longer have any impact on my channel, I get to do what I want, God bless her, that's what she's able to do. And it's fucking this vigilante justice bullshit that goes around that hurts her ability to do things the way that she needs to and she wants to. Right? So, it doesn't even matter if they got the right person. Amaranth, that's her situation. It does not help her. How does it help her to dox him? Explain that to me. You can't. It doesn't. If she said dox him, then I don't care. But, like, you still shouldn't be doing that, to be honest with you. But, you know, it doesn't matter. He was trying to play, like, vigilante justice. So, it wouldn't have been very much better even if they got the right guy. In fact, it might have been worse. Because how do you, like, imagine that. Imagine he got doxxed and then it, like, ended up falling back onto Amaranth in some way. Either she started getting harassed as well, because I think they lived together, or they did at the time. Or, you know, maybe that would have, if he's an abusive person and now he got doxxed, and now he got really angry and started hitting her. Like, you know what I mean? And he just made the situation work. You know what I'm saying? It's like, and that's not right. But, like how did you help by being a provocateur in this situation? You know? So, it never should have happened. And I blame Ethan more than this girl, because he should have never allowed it in the first place. He should have been like, we're not going to talk about doxing. I'll reach out to Amaranth, show her some support privately. You're a big content creator, do whatever you want. You know? So.
Comments and then found his name and think that was reliable information. Keep in mind, this is one of the largest podcasts on YouTube, and that's how they run their research for them. Let's carry on.
Music producer and the songwriter, yeah.
God, I hope that man's life is ruined for this.
I hope so.
Oh, someone says, why you abuse... okay.
You know, they're like, wow, such a fuck, you're so brave, Ethan. You let out today.
He's like, I don't give a fuck. I don't give a shit. Yeah, I don't give a shit. I want this guy's life ruined. Are you kidding me?
Yep.
Oh, is this him?
Yeah, I personally don't care about the guy. Like, we should be caring about Amaranth. We should want his life ruined. We can hate him, but we should want her to get the proper support she needs, right? Like, yes, I do like the word provocateur recently. Thank you. I like words sometimes.
Oh my fucking god, you have to fucking...
You want to send them on to the wrong person.
And the way he justifies it is so stupid. He says, this is a piece of shit. I know he's guilty without proof, without further evidence, without a court quiz, so he deserves it. Okay? Now here's where the problem lies. You guys don't remember a similar narrative being painted about Johnny Depp initially when this whole stuff was happening? I remember years back. People were,
listen, I'm going to be real with you, but now we're getting a little too far into the defending of... Listen, I watched the full hour and a half or so. I made a mistake at first when I covered this Amaranth situation, but then I watched like pretty much what I could, which was like the interaction online. There's a lot of yeah, I mean, I have it here in this VOD. It's gonna be like just a clip in the VOD here, like right here, the Amaranth part, like, you know, right here. It's like part one, and then there's like a really weird middle ground, and then there's part two. Based on the way that he's talking to her and shit, he seems incredibly abusive. So I wouldn't lean too much into the... Do you remember the Johnny Depp thing? I understand what you're saying. We have her getting screamed at live. I would just say I personally wouldn't go with the defending Amaranth's husband angle. But okay. All right.
We're talking about Johnny like he was a devil and he was getting booed off every show. Imagine if people tried doxing him at that period based off the information that they had. This is why you don't do mob justice online.
Let me push it further to you. Not just mob. Ahmaud Arbery, according to two people, he was guilty of stealing. When he didn't steal shit, and guess what happened? He got killed. Innocent. Yeah, that's why you don't act upon without having any research or anything.
Listen, I agree with the anti-vigilante justice for sure. I don't know if I would compare those two.
That's the same thing that happened. And all these mobs going to people, doxing people, when I created at the
go to the person's site.
Oh, for sure.
And now with the wrong person. That's crazy. Forget doing the extreme, which is going to home, which can happen. Talk about the lowest end, which is just imagine you're minding your motherfucking business.
Yeah.
You ain't done nothing, and you get a flood of hateful DMs accusing you of everything under the sun. People making threats. People saying this.
Well, again, if you listen to the thing, he's screaming at her and saying some horrible shit, like threatening to kill her dog and everything. These comparisons are a little bit of a reach here. Really can't get on board with this part. Can't really get on board with this part. You know, like if you heard the stream, it was pretty bad. You could be skeptical, but I feel like they're leaning too much into this guy's innocent type of a thing. I question if they actually watched that Amaranth thing.
Like, that fucks with your mental. Absolutely. You become paranoid. Absolutely. You become afraid, and then they go after your family, your job, your address. They start sending stuff, because he was joking about sending shit in the mail.
Yeah, threatening to, like, sell her horses like a horse meat factory and shit.
Yeah, right? And so I'm looking at this whole thing like, bruh, I don't even like Sneeko, and that doesn't even pale in comparison to stuff that he's doing. You get what I'm trying to say? And so that's where I'm at.
Maybe. Yeah, I guess so. I'm just pretty much on the... I'm just very apprehensive about the whole anti-Semitic shit and the constant portrayal of like Jewish people like running the world. That kind of shit left like the Holocaust. Maybe I'm just being a little sensitive because I am of Jewish descent. But
I can say pathetic to some degree because you see.
Are they talking about the innocent guy? It sounds like they're talking about. It sounds like they're talking about the husband as if he might be guilty. I mean, he might be innocent. Maybe I'm interpreting that wrong. Oh, you think that they're saying that the guy who got doxxed wrong? Okay, that makes sense. Okay, listen, it's hard to interpret. It sounds like they're running the fence for the husband. I could just be wrong in my interpretation. Maybe you guys are right. Okay.
See how uneven this shit is, okay? You can make the argument that both deserve fine, but you can't tell me that what Ethan's doing is not exponentially worse. And you on in front of a larger audience, right?
That's what. So, because not for nothing, I'm pretty sure they're talking about the husband a little bit because he made the comparison to Johnny Depp. They're not talking about the innocent guy. Listen, I just want to be very clear because I think you guys are very wrong here. They made a comparison to Johnny Depp here.
Here's what the problem lies. You guys don't remember a similar narrative being painted about Johnny Depp initially when
they're talking about the husband.
I remember years back, people were talking about Johnny like he was the devil and he was getting booed off every show. Imagine if people tried to dox him at that period based off the information.
They're talking about the husband. Just letting you know that you guys are wrong about your interpretation. I'm correct about my interpretation right here. Just saying. Okay.
That they had this with everything under the sun, people making threats, people saying this, and like, that fucks with your mental. Absolutely. You become paranoid, absolutely. You become afraid, and then they go after your family, your job, your address. They start, bruh, what I say? And so that's why I'm actually sympathetic to some degree, because you see how uneven this shit is, okay? You can make the argument that both deserve fine, but you can't tell me that what Ethan's doing is not exponentially worse. And you on in front of a larger audience.
I think what they're saying is that they're just saying like, hey, last time something like this happened, we look at Johnny Depp, like everybody was saying he was a terrible person and jumped on him as if he was the victim. I mean, assuming that he was an aggressor and destroyed his career for like however many years. And then other things came out later. I get what they're saying. I think that I probably didn't really watch the Amaranth thing, I guess. So they don't know some of the things that the husband did, but okay.
Yes. Right? So, I just want y'all to appreciate some of the biases that exist when it comes to these policy things. The fact that he got banned for the comment about Ben Shapiro, but not for this, is crazy.
Oh, is he a bodybuilder?
He's a...
Oh, no, he didn't get banned for this, right? He was a bodybuilder in the past.
This chat ass, is he Asian?
Yeah.
I hope his life is over.
So imagine these rabid fans are hearing this stuff. They start looking him up and sending him crazy messages, and they're being primed by Ethan by saying he hurt this woman, he's a piece of shit, I hope his life is ruined. Basically encouraging the fans to go let them know. Why would you protect his identity from the fans, or why wouldn't you reveal that information? It's because if you know you say it in this conversation, you know what's going to happen. The fans are going to have something to say. So the issue isn't even that they dox somebody, okay, to them. The issue is always them like, oh, we might dox the wrong person. You should be doing this, period.
That part I absolutely agree with.
If you don't know all the facts of the case, if you haven't heard the entire of the story, it's not your place. And this is why it's against the rules.
Even if you have heard the whole story, again, vigilance justice is really not very good. Right?
Against the law. So, hey man, I hope bad things come for you too.
Fuck this guy, bro. I'm so glad we actually found his identity. I've heard that he.
Well, Ian's not showing this, and I think that's the right call. Yeah.
Ian not showing this doesn't fucking matter. You guys said his name, you said he was a music producer. You put this guy's name on Google, you put his fucking job, you're gonna find out who it is very quickly with a simple Google search. You don't have to put it on screen. If I say, Godfrey, comedian from New York, been on tour, you put that shit in Google, I don't gotta put his fucking shit on screen, you won't know who it is.
You're talking about Gilbert Godfrey?
And he knew it was wrong because his employee was telling him. Which shout outs to him because you need at least a good voice. So, give credit.
Dan's the only, unironically, Dan's probably the only reason that podcast hasn't fucking fallen apart. To be honest with you.
More credit to, it's a minimum bar.
You don't think that what they did was doxing? I mean, you could debate that, but I guess the question is, do you think it was responsible to say, like, the name and a bunch of information about this person? Do you think that was, like, a bad idea? And then it's the thing is, it's like, is that even the bigger issue, or is the bigger issue that Ethan's trying to take his matter into his own hands? If you think, let's just assume, right? With all the information we have, it seems like, sure, it's possible that it's not this way, but it seems like Amaranth's husband is like physically, or at least emotionally manipulative, maybe abusive, or shitty. If you think, and let's say you think that this guy's a fucking abuser, do you think it's smart to try to dox this person? Make him really angry and see like that potential anger being taken out of Amaranth? You know what I mean? It doesn't make sense in any capacity. It doesn't make sense in no interpretation where it doesn't make sense to go after this guy. It makes sense to try to help her, right?
Hey, don't dox people. Don't be putting out names. But he repeated it like numerous times. And this motherfucker was saying, he's stupid, we got bad things. Bitch, that's you.
That's fucked up. What I said does not even split it. We're not.
You haven't shown anything yet?
He has not
Okay,
shit.
you guys find out who the real guy is, and I'll show him. Goddamn.
So he still wants to dox. And think of the person they're trying to dox is Amaranth's husband. You don't know the story about Amaranth? She's got some kind of huge issue going on with her husband. Apparently this guy's been putting hands or doing something to animals. It's very complicated, okay?
I don't think he's been putting hands on animals. He makes these really weird, like, manipulative threats that he's gonna, like, kill her dogs if she doesn't stream enough or some shit. It's fucking crazy. Or, like, he's gonna send her horses to meat factories. It's fucked up. I don't know if he's putting his hands on the dogs in, like, a bad way, but it's such a weird situation. It seems like he's trying to, like, manipulate her by threatening to hurt the dogs.
But initially, based off the voice calls and everything that's been released, the dude in question has crazy anger issues and said some stuff on the report.
For sure.
So everyone's been behind her, supportive. Now, let's say I'm being the most generous. Everything she said is absolutely true. This guy's the evil, he's Satan, whatever, and they're going through a messy divorce. I want you guys to think about what happens when a random loser like Ethan doxes this dude who's got crazy anger issues.
Yeah,
think about
I agree with this.
Does that not put her in jeopardy? Does that not make her safety less safe? Does that not put her in a precarious position?
I agree 100%.
Let's say they're being diplomatic now and they're working through things, but now he's doxed her, and now the whole relationship goes up in flames as a result. This is the ways in which content creators can use their fans for completely terrible things. And absolutely, if you've got a fan base, you can encourage them to do stuff. I know for a fact, okay? If I told my fan base, go out there and start yelling at them, a lot of y'all not going to do it because y'all decent people. But a lot of folks are impressed.
It doesn't take one point.
Well, this is the thing, is Ethan, to add to this, Ethan was like, guys, we should send, like, dog shit to his house or something. We should send, like, dog shit to his house. And, like, I know we get to fall back on the joke narrative, but again, people use jokes all the time to enforce real narratives. Sometimes jokes are just jokes, but sometimes jokes have a little bit of like an undertone to them.
Remember that?
Right?
Found her in the Crohn's.
So maybe people would send poop, or maybe people are listening to Ethan go, "This guy's a piece of shit. We should ruin his life. Let's send him dog shit." Maybe some people are like, "Well, if he's this much a piece of shit, show him to his house." Right? Now it's a good thing that they were like, "It's not the right guy. It's not the right guy. This guy probably didn't get harassed." But like, just think about what happens if they got it wrong another time, and that person did get harassed. You know what I mean?
8 million people to go out there to make just having 10 phone calls. One phone call is upsetting. One and none.
When are jokes? Then one that's very explicitly clear that there's a joke. If you're making a joke about how you should send dog shit to somebody's house after like releasing their name and everything, I think that joke is being used to reinforce an idea. Okay. Like before, when I'm making this fucking joke about how black is black privilege because black don't crack, I'm pretty sure you guys know that I'm just fucking around off of like a silly stereotype that black people age well, and like it's meaningless. I'm just being stupid. I'm just being dumb. But like, this is very different. Okay, we should understand that.
Anonymous phone call of someone that has your information. Absolutely, it doesn't take. It just takes one person to go out there and be like, "Hey, I know what you realize. Are
You know what I mean?
I mean, how are we jumping the gun? You said we have his identity. Olivia said we know who he is.
It's also his name on the marriage certificate.
It's a very common name. That is not a unique name whatsoever. So I just want to be very sure that we're not sending a mob.
You know what else? I think Dan, they made a clickbaity title for the next stream after this called Dan is Quitting H3 Podcast or something. And it was over this situation because Dan was so, and I don't think he's ever going to actually leave. But he was so upset that clearly there was a conversation. I don't remember exactly where it is. I just remember that there was that bit there where he was like, Dan's leaving the podcast, some bullshit like that. So,
with people after the wrong, you know what I mean?